Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Town of Camden Select Board meeting for September 3rd, 2019. With that, I don't think there are any agenda modifications, so we'll go into the agenda and ask if there's any public input on non-agenda items. Anybody want to speak to a non-agenda item? Not seeing any hands, we'll move on to the second item, which is Select Board reports, and we'll start to my left with Jenna.
Well, I wanted to say that Allison and I actually both are on the board at the Camden Rockport Historical Society, and I had the pleasure of spending some time at Windjammer Weekend, and Eileen in the audience here, talking with a lot of folks about our history. We had a little booth there, and something that it was a phenomenal group of people. It was a fun event. People were having a great time. A question that we repeatedly got, and it was Ethan, my husband, and I at the booth, repeatedly got and immediately were kind of able to dispel, was that there's a lot of misinformation about this situation with the dams, or lack of information. And I think for me, and Allison, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for me it's really important that people not jump to conclusions about what is or isn't going to happen. We're in really the formative stages of this. It's a real environmental win from my perspective, and I just really want to encourage people to listen, to ask questions, to not have preconceived notions, because we're still in such a fact-finding, information gathering stage, and this is really an exciting thing in a lot of ways. And so just with that, I'll pass the torch here.
Well, I would just add to that, Audra, and we discussed today about doing a document called Frequently Asked Questions, which I believe Audra has agreed to lead the charge, and I'm certainly happy to participate so we get some of this clarified and more crisply.
I think that would be really great. And there was no lack of desire to hear information, and a lot of relief, and just, oh, that's not what I heard, or that's the usual. Sure.
Totally agree, Jen.
Met with a lot of positivity. So.
Totally agree. Mr. Ratner.
So just to be clear, so what I'm hearing is we're not planning on draining Lake McGuntacook?
We got that question. No.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. It's
that one trip.
I know.
No, just to be clear, no, definitely not. Not
Okay,
even up for consideration.
Also not closing the river.
Oh,
Or certainly not
Seabright
behind,
empowerment.
every Seabright Dam should stay as it is, and people will always be able to swim at short tail. And because it's fun, it's funny a little bit, but there are people coming into the town office that think that, and confused.
So good.
Angry
So,
sometimes, but.
We're not draining any lakes, we're not draining
even
the
the
river.
upper part of the
We're
river,
not
yeah.
doing any of that. We're fact-finding at this moment. I've been out of town a bunch lately, but I do have one thing to discuss. Windjammer Weekend was this past weekend, as Jenna mentioned. She was doing one of the booths. The Camden Opera House had Roger McGuinn, formerly founder of the Byrds rock group, and it was totally sold out. The line, I guess, went all the way down past
Mechanic Street.
Down to Mechanic Street. And from what I understand, it was an absolutely splendid show, spectacular. People loved it. And from what I heard, Roger really liked the house, the opera house, and the location as well. So it was a win-win on all sides, and a great sellout. So hopefully we'll continue to bring those kind of quality shows to town. That's the goal.
That's wonderful news. Ms. Allison.
Can Taylor go first real quick?
Yes,
so I can-
yes.
Definitely. I'll be quick. Just again, a big thank you to everybody that worked so hard on Windjammer Festival this weekend. I was able to get out for a few events and check out the crate races, and it's always such a good time, and you can see a lot of people smiling and busy, and some people that I hadn't seen in a while that made the trip to town to check it out, which is always nice to hear. So just again, thank you to everybody that worked so hard to put that together and make it another success.
Okay, so the first thing that I'm really concerned about is that we're missing this. So there's a little bit of history behind this bench. Apparently, many people in town were hoping to have a bench here for a long time. And one day, my kids and I were, well, they especially were very tired and wanted to rest, and were complaining lots downtown. And so I posted this picture on Facebook and was surprised by the litany of people that started commenting all of a sudden. We've been asking for a bench there forever. And all of a sudden, I think Rick Seibel commented, and he was like, we have a bench, and all we need is the town manager to say we could put it there. And so there has been now a bench there that lots of people have really enjoyed. It's frequently used, and it has been stolen.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I mean, or accidentally misplaced, or, you know,
Wound up in my trunk by
nobody
mistake.
know, I mean, it's hard to believe.
Dramatic lead up to that was excellent.
It's been there for at least for a year, I'd say.
Maybe more.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, this picture was from 2017.
Yeah, it's a couple of years.
So, and my kids had noticed, as we were driving one day, they said it was upright. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that's the Public Works signal to the other Public Works people that it needs to be repaired or something, or, but then the next thing I heard, it was gone. And they said they've, you know, Parks and Rec and Public Works and the police department even heard about it. So it's very upsetting. And if anybody knows anything about the bench, we'd love to have it returned. The other thing, you know, I am just going to bring up trash cans again, because we don't have, actually this trash can, even right here that you can see in the picture, isn't there anymore. It is nice that we have those little things that say we're a smoke-free village, please extinguish your cigarette, and then there's a place to put the cigarette butt. But in making that happen, we seem to have lost a trash can. And I understand that there's one right in front of Camden House of Pizza, but we should at least have trash cans around the the formal downtown. You can't, I mean, just the town parking lots, we don't have trash cans, and everybody seems to agree. And last time I said, well, maybe we could all point out where they should go and this and that was considered to be too, like meddling too much in staff issues or something, and that, but I just don't know what else we would need to do just to get some trash cans. So then I'm going to not talk about the crosswalk because there's not widespread agreement about needing a crosswalk out here. The time of park closing is something I've gotten a bunch of comments about, and I don't ever really think about, wow, it's too late to go to a town park. I guess I just disregard it. Even the Harbor Park closing time, and I get that there's some of it is good because it does give us the right to ask people to move along if it's, they're being disruptive after 10 in Harbor Park, or, but it is pretty odd to suggest that you couldn't just walk through Harbor Park at 10 o'clock at night and look at the stars. I mean, is that what we really?
Isn't this an agenda item tonight?
I don't think so.
It is, yeah.
Oh, really? Did we actually put that?
Number 10.
Park curfew. Oh, great. Okay. Oh, yeah, I think I was frustrated and requested that.
Bathrooms and everything.
Sorry about that.
And no, that's great. And I was wondering if the Parks and Rec liaison has an update on where we might stand with swings at Lake Beach.
Yeah, the last discussion was to move forward with getting swings into Lake Beach. That was the only one they mentioned, if that's what you're
I think we should just try to focus on one thing and do it well at this point. I didn't want to expand it.
And they are. They are. And figuring out a way to get the swings replaced at Lake Beach.
Is that like a multi or brainstorming event,
No,
or is
no.
that a,
I think we're talking about this, probably this fall. Which is.
what are we in right now? Okay,
Summer.
those-
Don't rush it.
okay.
Please don't rush it.
Don't
Still
rush it.
summer.
Okay. I mean, what the heck? It just like it just put the swings up, and wood chips, we need wood chips, right?
Yep.
Now, this isn't just getting the baby swing back. This
No,
is
Full
actually.
swing set.
So I had somebody ask me, what would happen if somebody just arrived there with a bunch of wood chips? Is that the big holdup, or
No,
would we
I
accept a wood
I
chip
don't think
donation?
That's not the holdup. That's a very small cost of the whole thing. No,
right.
that's not the holdup.
Okay. And then for the harbor, just a quick little thing for the Harbor Committee, I've noticed a lot, and I before didn't know, that the town floats, I find a lot of people don't realize, especially visitors and even some residents, don't realize that you can go down on the town floats. And the other night, I was reminded because there was somebody fishing, really excited about fish and fishing off of the walkway there. And I couldn't understand why it was like the fish are farther out for the most part, the ones he was trying to get. And I told him, oh, you can go down on all of these floats here. And the people thought it was like the greatest tip ever. And I remember when I first found out that it was okay to go down on those. I felt a little bit silly, but not if you're not part of the harbor and all of that. It's not clear that which ones are private and which ones are public. And just the joy that it brings to people when they realize they can go down there, that maybe the harbor committee or signing committee or whatever.
Improving public access at the harbor is definitely a priority for the committee.
There's even access, though. I feel like there's already the access. It's just
Signage.
people don't know that they can go down there. Like, this is public. Feel free to walk down on the.
Yeah, no, I guess the only reason I say that is because I think that would fit right into something that's already a priority.
Letting people know that there is access already.
Yeah.
Like this, public,
sense.
private, or.
The next meeting's September 11th. I'll make sure I bring it up.
And then, sorry, one last thing. Taxis. I'm wondering if anybody else, I've had a lot of people say that they can't find a taxi in Camden after a certain hour, and that it's causing a problem for businesses, and people come and they start maybe, have a few drinks, and then they assume that it's a normal town where you can get a taxi, and then they can't. And it's just been I haven't had that experience because I never need one, but I'm just kind of curious if other people have heard that. And
But somebody did come in 2 weeks ago to take a taxi cab permit off from Janice.
oh,
And I don't remember who she was. I just happened to be in the office at the time. So I think there's something going on there. But I think it's correct. We don't really have Uber here. Or
Really only two
Lyft.
companies in Rockland.
And
Yeah,
I
that's
guess
true.
a lot of the time they
That's
just
true.
don't.
Yeah.
But it is one of the things that we do is, I think, license them, or maybe
Yep.
even if it turns out that other people, that it's, that this is actually a widespread problem, maybe the town could do something like put out the word that this is needed more, or, I don't know,
All right.
keep an ear out. That's it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Allison. With that, we'll move on to the approval of the board minutes from August 20, 2019. Any of the four of us were here have any comments on the meeting minutes? If not, I have one. On the top of page 2, Kendall, where it says, let me read it. The design for Route 1 from state, they've already spoken to the homeowners, not true. They will be speaking, MDOT will be speaking to the homeowners in October, November about either, the rest of the sentence is fine, about either temporary or permanent rights of way. Okay. Any other comments? I know. Motion to approve with
So
amendments?
moved.
Second.
All's in favor? 4-0-1. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the single item on the consent agenda tonight, which is the application to utilize the Village Green by SIF for the purpose of information on mental health awareness and suicide prevention for veterans from September 14th to September 15th. That would be midday to midday time period to be there to provide this information. Is there any objection to the item on the consent agenda from the board? Not hearing any, then that item is hereby adopted. At this point, then, we will move on to item 4, which is the public hearing for the, on the ordinance. Yes, sir.
Item
I missed
5?
one?
Or was the
5, I meant 5. I'm sorry. Just did consent, right? Yeah, we're on 5
We have
now.
a sneaky little
Did I say
public
4?
hearing.
You said 4.
See, I can't count. Anyway, other than that, I'm perfect. Public hearing on item 5, public hearing on the ordinance for November special town meeting vote. As you all know, the purpose of the public hearing is to allow the public to express their opinions on the matters at hand. We would ask the public, anybody in the public who would speak for, against, or just to the topic alone, to come to the microphone up here, identify yourselves, and address all comments through me, please. during that discussion by the person at the podium, please no comments from the audience because we want to keep it focused. Once everybody has had a chance to comment from the public, I will close that portion of the discussion and revert to the select board for action on the item. And will be no more public input unless somebody from the select board has a question of somebody who has spoken earlier. With that, I would like to open the public hearing for the proposed amendment to the Camden Police Ordinance, Part 1F, which is marijuana licensing ordinance. Do you want to speak to it first, Jeremy, then I'll ask public comment?
I think this will be the fourth time I've probably said this, but,
You have to say it
sorry,
5 times
thank
now.
you. 5 times.
Thanks, Bruce.
As part of the zoning amendments last June that allowed cultivation for marijuana cultivation, there was a provision in that ordinance that required a business licensing or a business license to be issued by the select board. This ordinance does that. I've brought it to you a couple of times at least. And I tweaked it once based on your comments. Other than that, I have heard no comment from the public, from anyone about this at all.
Okay. Okay.
And so it is a public hearing on this, and
Right.
that's all I have to say.
We'll hang close, especially be questions. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak to this draft ordinance that was potentially go on the ballot in November? Seeing no hands from the public, then I will revert and close public discussion and revert to the select board for comment on this ordinance item. Want to start? Taylor, any comments on it? or-
Sure, yeah, I think, I'm very comfortable with the way that it's written. Our marijuana working group did a significant amount of work ahead of this, so I think that this is kind of a button on that work. And this is obviously retail marijuana, and the licensing that this may end up touching is going to change a lot at the state level, so I'm comfortable the way that this is left open enough for us to.
Great, thank you. I'm going to flip over to Jenna, just to surprise you.
I was just saying, what Taylor said is exactly what I would say, is I feel like this is kind of the finishing touch, just getting this in front of voters, and I think there's been a lot of work and a lot of workshopping. I thank Jeremy, members of the working group, and as Taylor said, it is a bit of a moving target at the state level, and I think that we're in good shape with this proposed ordinance.
Allison?
I just want to make sure everybody understands it's not including retail, so this won't do anything this won't make retail marijuana sales allowable. The only thing, will we be looking at the way it's worded on the ballot at a different time?
You will. You will when we set the warrant language. That's what this is
Correct.
not that, but
Okay.
we will be doing that shortly.
That'd be my big thing, is
I
just making sure
understand.
that we don't confuse people, because basically this is, if we were to not do this, then everybody's vote from last time where they said they wanted to allow it under these circumstances and blah, 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 would be, rendered invalid, basically. So making them not think that they're voting on something really new again.
Yep, and that's definitely key.
So thanks for your work.
I have nothing to add.
Me either, but that's a good clarification. This is written so that if in the future retail or processing, these other steps would, if they were approved by the voters in the future,
Correct.
the licensing would apply to those two.
Correct.
The only thing it applies to today is cultivation, which was approved by the voters in June.
Correct.
With that said, I have no further comment either, so do I have a motion to accept?
I make a motion that we accept the proposed amendment to the Camden Police Ordinance, Part 1F, marijuana licensing ordinance, and send it forward for the November ballot.
Second.
Any further discussion from the board? All's in favor? 5-0. Good. We're still in the public hearing mode, so we're going to, same procedures apply basically for the hearing of 3 liquor licenses for our establishments here, the first of which is application of Long Grain for the renewal of Class 1 restaurant liquor license at 20 Washington Street. Any public comment for, against, or just want to speak to that for the Long Grain? Not seeing any hands.
Crosswalk. Nothing.
over here.
I know. Any comments on the board side? None. Allison, no, motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the application of Long Grain for a renewal of their Class 1 restaurant liquor license, Long Grain located at 20 Washington Street.
Second.
Discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor? 5-0. Second application would be for Hawksbill Court at 5 Bayview Landing for the renewal of a Class 11 lounge liquor license. Any comment from the public on that one, Hunter?
I thought that was deleted.
No, it was deleted as victual license.
Okay, thank you.
Good catch, though. What's the matter?
Sorry.
Any comment from the public on this license? Not hearing any, revert to the select board? Oh, Mark, of course.
And I see that the owner, Matt Haskells, here, so I'm glad Matt's here. Liquor licensing is a little tough, right? We make a recommendation to the state, and they're the ones who actually issue the liquor license. We issue vitreous license, which Matt needs to get in here and do. I will say, and when we get to that point, I just think it's important. The fire department has been there at least on one occasion, so has the code office. There are some significant code issues that need to be addressed when it comes to life safety. There's some egress that's blocked. We need to fix that. And fire and code has talked to Matt's folks. I am hopeful that they move quickly on doing this. Otherwise, when we get to the vitreous licensing piece, it may not go this way. I just want Matt to be successful down there, but we also need people to be safe. And I just want to bring that up at this point.
Thanks,
Go
Chairman
ahead.
Allison.
Yep.
So are those issues not relevant to the liquor license then?
I read through the liquor licensing rules, and it's really not. It's more of a whether or not the owner, operator, proprietor of the shop is doing what they need to from law enforcement and that kind of safety.
More applicable.
Bigger picture stuff, not
applicable
the
to-
life safety of the issue of the inside. We have a lot of jurisdiction over that under the vitreous licensing.
Right.
And part of me, it's assuming that the reason the vitreous was pulled today was because of those issues or pulled from this, so we can resolve those issues before we get to that place.
That makes sense.
Hold? So,
It was
The
off the
agenda.
agenda.
When,
Licenses are expired currently.
when will it come up?
Matt,
Hopefully
can
on
you
the-
speak to that? I mean, your vitreous license is past due at the present time. You'll be in soon?
Yeah, I thought that was part of this, but
Yeah.
Well, hopefully
one-
we'll make it part of the next select board meeting on
Well, maybe
September
not to-
17th.
I was just going to say, the one question that came up, last year was there were issues about the fire and the smoke from the fire, and I know that you did a lot of work on that. I was sort of curious where we are with that.
I've taken a couple calls, complaints about that this year, and it's always has to be when that, the weather is right, or wrong in this instance. And I mean, I have heard a couple of complaints, but that's it, that the complainant that was concerned about it, no longer in that space, so that building doesn't operate like he,
Right.
when he was here, he was talking about, he opened up the bottom floor, he's also upstairs, so it was like using this kind of
Yep.
big chimney effect in his building. He's not in both those all that space anymore.
Right.
So it's not impacting his business like it was last year.
Right.
entirely?
Again,
I think he just moved into one of the
Yeah, and
spaces.
let's focus, this is a liquor license.
Correct.
not
And
vitro
so last
license,
year when
so-
we talked about it, that was the vitreous licensing. This
I
is
was just
liquor.
curious.
Yeah,
do I have to go through another meeting for my victuals license?
Yes,
you will.
yes, they're separate licenses.
Nobody told me that.
Okay, well, we can do it as soon as the 17th, so as soon as you have the information to us, we can do it.
Yeah.
Not a problem. That'll be the next meeting. All right, so with that said, any other comments from the select board on this license?
Question.
I would just say that I would hope that Matt can work with Jeremy or whoever he needs to get everything moving forward. I think that hopefully, I mean, knowing this establishment, that these guys will work on these issues, whatever they may
We
be.
want them to be there, we want them to
Yeah,
thrive there.
yeah,
so,
absolutely, and
But it does take
kind of
both
express
parties
support
to-
for the next step and
Yep.
doing it correctly, so.
Yep.
Allison?
So how do we handle it when a license expires without it being renewed in time, or is that?
That's That's a very good question. I mean, these are the applicant's licenses, they're not the town licenses, so it is incumbent upon the applicant to make sure they know when their license expires and when they need to submit an application to us.
Right.
And Janice does inform
Oh,
everyone.
I wasn't saying like, do
Oh,
we
no,
send
no,
out
I know
proper
what you're saying.
reminders? I was saying, what do we?
But with the, you know, with the state, like with the liquor license, so we send a letter to the state just saying, you know, we've got a public hearing scheduled for this date for the liquor license, and we give them a copy of the application that's been submitted to us, so they know that it's in process.
And I have a 7 days grace period after my license expires anyways, which I'm still within as well.
Can you repeat
That's
that
true.
so that people can hear from?
Matt Haskell, the owner, indicated he's got a 7-day grace period from the state on these liquor licenses.
That's true.
Does the town have that same grace period?
For vitulers,
I don't
For
believe
either,
so.
for any of it?
And remember, this is not a local liquor license we
Right.
submit, we just make a recommendation to the state.
Right.
They're the ones who issue the liquor license.
Right.
Okay, I might be, I'm sorry, but I have more, I don't quite understand.
Go ahead.
So do we not have any authority then to,
If,
I don't have really an opinion about this, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the details.
so in my understanding of liquor licensing, the primary review on the town's end would be local law enforcement, meaning the police chief.
Right.
I think we can actually not give a liquor license for any number of reasons. It's more of a privilege than a, Camden's historically has been, not that I necessarily agree with it, but has been a very
But if there's
controlling town.
unruly
We were big into
activity and criminal
temperance and-
activity and those kinds of things happening out of a bar, then the police chief would likely make a recommendation, you don't approve it,
Right.
and then it would go to the state, and the state would likely deny it.
Right. Right, that's what we're
But the
looking at.
town, the way we have our ordinances set up, it's still, we still reserve the right to approve or not approve, or,
I think that would be really in your Vitzler's licensing that you're talking about, because the liquor licensing is just a recommendation that you're making to the state.
Correct,
okay.
correct. Any other comments from the board?
And we don't have a liquor licensing ordinance,
Right.
right? Because it's state law that governs it. There's just a
Probably
provision.
change the language that we use to,
We
Oh, I
probably
see.
can. I've never looked into it, but I'm sure we
just
can.
because it's not, we're not really approving, we're
It's
just,
a recommendation for
Recommendation.
renewal to the state. You're right, it's not a renewal, we don't renew it.
Right, the state.
because some towns don't do that.
All towns
All towns
that
have
I'm
to.
aware of in the state of Maine just make a recommendation to the state, and the state issues the
Right.
liquor license.
Like in Rockport, I think it happens through the town clerk's office and not through the select board.
In
Rockport.
Rockport, it would be a recommendation then
The
from
state.
But it
from
doesn't come before the
clerk's
select.
office to the state.
Right, right.
Okay, well, I'll go down that rabbit hole another
Any
day,
other
but
comments from the board?
Nope, I would make a motion that we approve the application of Hawksbill Court at 5 Bayview Landing for a renewal of their class 4, class 11, sorry, me and my Roman numerals, lounge liquor license tonight. Recommendation
for
renewal,
recommendation of renewal.
however we want, but
Did I hear a second from you, Taylor?
Yes.
Any more further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0, thank you. The last application we have on the public hearing is for the Jack at 41 Mechanic Street for the renewal of Class 11 lounge liquor license. Anyone here from the public who'd like to speak for, against, or just speak to this license? Not seeing any hands, then I will close the public hearing portion and revert to the select board discussion. Anybody have any comments on the Jack renewal recommendation? Motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the application of the Jack at 41 Mechanic Street for a recommended renewal of their Class 11 lounge liquor license.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. With that, we will now close the public hearing portion of this meeting and move on to our agenda item to hear some exciting news from our Historic Resources Commission. Ms. Scaling.
Do you need the computer, Pat? No. No, you don't, okay.
This is a simple presentation.
Good.
Very good.
Of course, I've heard that before, but
I believe Pat when she says
I
it.
do too.
Well, I thought it was easier just to put it on paper because I didn't really know
That's
how to-
fine, Pat, that's
to,
fine.
To let you all.
That's
get
fine.
all of your addresses and- maybe we could just pass that down. Sure. There's probably not enough to get to. This has changed a little. since I sent you the-
Okay.
In case you have your draft.
All the extra copies.
So do I have to say my name?
That would be a good idea.
Okay, Pat Scaling, Historic Resources Committee, Camden Historic Resources Committee. First of all, I wanted to just let you know that we have a new chair of the Historic Resources Committee, and she's here tonight. And it's Eileen Curtis
Oh, wow.
Kleinman, and she has been on the committee for a short time, but she has agreed to take over the chair.
Good. If we have any hard questions, we'll ask her then instead of you,
Yeah,
right?
that would be good.
Welcome.
Be good.
Just
Yeah.
introduce yourself,
Great.
please.
Okay. Eileen Curtis Kleinman from Camden.
Thanks. Good to meet you.
Nice to see you. Good to meet you, too.
You're welcome to stand with Pat or whatever you want to do. Or just sit down and
Okay,
relax.
how about
There you go. That's even better.
Sit right here, yep.
Congratulations, Pat, on being able to find somebody that
Yes.
it's a scary job for anybody to take on because she's done such a remarkable job. But
Thank you.
thank you, Eileen. That's great.
I know she'll do a good job. And everyone's agreed to support her because we know she's the newest person on the committee, so I think she's going to have a lot of help. I know she will. Also, I wanted to, before we just go over our work plan, I wanted just to mention that we are just 7 people on the committee, and I can name them if you want, but
Jeremy, could you take it? No, it's okay. Go ahead, Pat.
I can name them if you want, but I think you all know who the 7 people are. But I just wanted to make a little shout out to our volunteers, because really, this committee couldn't work and get done what it's done without the volunteers. So I just wanted to mention by name Susan Sneed and Barbara Furman, who were both previous members in past years of the Historic Resources Committee, and they've been really active on the historic home plaque project. And then Ann Wagand, who's working on the Jacobs Avenue research, because we're trying to get an historic district nominated for Jacobs Ave. And Ann is a resident there, and she's been working on that history. Wanted to point out Dennis McGurk and Michael Scaling. They're both spouses, and we give them kind of whatever nobody else wants to do. We ask Mike and Dennis to help us. They worked on the historic plaques and also on Curtis Island, restoration of the windows. And Jennifer Healy, whom you may not know, she's a fairly new resident. She's probably been in Camden for 3 or 4 years. She comes once in a while to our meetings, but was really interested in the mills and the river, and she wanted to do a walking tour for people who come to visit Camden, and she has completed her walking tour, and I'm going to give you a copy tonight. It'll be received from the printer this week, and Jennifer created the brochure, she did the research for the brochure, she worked on the layout of the brochure, she took it to the printer, and in addition, she and her husband have offered to pay for the first 500 copies of the brochure. So it's really a wonderful gift to the town. So what I'm going to give you is a mini size. It's going to be a regular pamphlet size. It's going to fold out like an accordion. And why don't I just give it to you? Some of them are printed front and back. And if they're printed front and back, the back is upside down, but I was not going to print these again. And if you get 2 sheets, then I think I wrote on one of these though, and I might
This
be
one,
that top
it's this
one.
one.
Okay.
There you go.
But I just wanted you to take a look at it, and I'm only going to point out just a couple of things, and then I'm going to move on to something else. But Jennifer did she's done a wonderful map on the insert, and again, this is going to be quite a bit bigger. It's going to be readable. This is not exactly readable, it's mini. But she did a little bit of history for the tour, and then she listed all of the mills from 1769 to 1893. The key on the map side shows which buildings are still in existence, and the map shows where they are in relation to other places in town. And I just want to read you a little of the narrative because I think it's a really good narrative. She talks about, at the very beginning, on the dark page that take 20 minutes to walk through Camden Mill history, which was as significant, I have to get my little magnifying glass, whoops, I guess I don't have it, oh, here it is, which is as significant as the
Shipbuilding industry.
shipbuilding industry.
To the identity of Camden, Maine.
Thank you.
Look, listen, and feel the thunderous water that powered over 11 mill sites and 2 foundries in Camden. The water power still flows through the town like a pulse, a heartbeat to be heard. Each of the mill sites had several lives under different management and manufacture a variety of products with anywhere from 400 to 800 employees in their businesses.
Okay, and stop there. And then down toward the bottom, she says, the majority of the mills were locally owned and at their peak in the 1920s, with most stock held principally by Camden residents. The woolen mill in particular employed both male and female workers who lived in Millville on the west side of Camden in small framed houses within walking distance of their jobs. So that's just a little bit of the narrative. And the other part that I really like is on the back side when she says, it's on this page, when the Knox mill was running at full speed, the suds from the water would come down over the last Minot Falls, now called Montgomery Falls, turning the entire harbor white. Those who worked in the woolen mill would have unusually soft hands from the lanolin in the wool. So she's really, I think, done a nice job telling the story, but also providing the facts and the history. And this has been fact-checked by Ken Gross and other people. So I feel pretty secure that this is a wonderful representation. Such a nice gift to the town. So, anyway.
Thank you.
In terms of, I'm also obsessed with the mill history, and so I love that there's, I actually haven't met her, so.
You haven't? No.
I would love to, and the town's working a lot on trying to look, at the history and the past and the future of all of these mill sites. Would there be, that's incredibly generous that she's willing to pay for all of this printing, is that, would there be a way for the town to be able to be, to really get behind it? There are probably things that the town might like to add, or I'm a little concerned about glorifying some of the pollution in the suds were really quite a bad thing, and lanolin and all.
I don't think she was promoting it as.
Right, I wonder if there's a way to, just if it's going to go under the town sort of stamp, and it deals with a lot of town-owned property, or, basically I'm asking, is this a final draft?
It is pretty much, and I don't, I guess I don't understand your hesitation. I mean, the mills were what they were. She's really not trying to glorify it. She's trying to.
No, I didn't mean to say it like that. I guess it's just if it's going to be through the town, it would be nice to, make it officially through the town, but don't want to get, I don't know, Audra, what are your thoughts?
I think that, the committees come to us and they've told us that they were doing this, and I think it's something that's good for everybody to know more about the industrial history of Camden and how it's shaped the town.
Okay.
And I think that it's going to add to the conversation we're having today about, the future of the river and the future of some of these industrial sites. And I think that it's just going to help kind of draw that link to the past and hopefully can, help people understand that things have changed significantly, and, a lot of what has shaped the town, it has a place in history that everybody wants to remember and wants to make sure that we don't
with the
forget it.
Riverwalk. I guess part of me is just really excited about it and thinking let's not miss an opportunity to say, and to learn more, something about the river. I can see the Pathways Committee saying, well, don't forget about the River Walk and how
Well, I
that all
already-
ties in.
We met with Jeff.
Oh, you did?
Jen and I met with Jeff, and he read it, and he approved it, and I said, is any way does it step on the Pathways Committee and what you're doing with the paths outside? He said, no, in a way, it enhances it, and it brings it into town more. So
And
I
that
felt
might
like
be
we
a
covered
way
that
when they're
base.
actually doing the tour itself, we could, we can tell them about some of the different
Right.
initiatives, like with the tannery or with pathways or with the, the dams and kind of how this is the history of it and this is what's happening looking forward.
Right.
It kind of ties it in, it makes it relevant
I agree.
to today.
I agree.
And,
Well, let's, what,
I just want to say, reading this, look at this, what an amazing piece of work she's done.
It is.
agree.
I think it's
agree.
pretty stunning that she's taken this on to do.
I agree.
Compliment her greatly.
I will. She did a similar thing for her hometown of Hartford, Connecticut, not with the Mill River Walk, but a similar kind of walk around a little neighborhood, so.
let's move forward to
Okay.
presentation,
Well,
please.
I mean, we can,
No, it's great.
I
I get worked up when I hear Mills, and I'm eagerly,
She'd get excited, and I don't blame her.
Sure.
That's fine.
Probably found my new best
You've
friend,
done a great
actually,
job, and
but-
unless the select board collectively wants to review this thing,
No,
I
no,
certainly
no,
don't.
no,
I know
that's
she does
fine.
get
I mean, it
that.
looks great.
Thank you very much.
I think we should have probably brought it for your review, but we did talk with Jeff and we did talk with Audra and
And we reviewed it at 2 of the meetings.
Yeah,
Historic Resources Committee meetings.
Different versions of it. So.
Yeah.
it's fine.
So it's a short walk, and you can see she starts right at, on Mechanic Street and goes up to Free Street. She looks at the Batchelder Mill, then comes back down, looks at the dam, the Batchelder Dam, and then she looks at the Richards Dam, and then invites them to go to the park and look up at the Montgomery Dam.
Good job.
Makes no comment about what's going to happen with the dams. It doesn't go there. Okay. So anyway, what we were trying to do on the Historic Resources Committee, realizing we had put ourselves pretty thin for the last couple of years, was to focus on our top 4 priorities, was recommended to us. And so our top 4 priorities are 1, 2, 3, 4, placing properties in the National Historic Register, and then we listed ones that we're particularly interested in. The Historic Marker Plaque Program, which is going on right now, advising on town-owned historic properties, number 3, and number 4, continuing historic preservation activities on Curtis Island was number 4. And then continuing work on projects currently underway, it's like, okay, we want to focus on those 4, but we really have these other things that are ongoing and they're underway, so we've got to figure those out, finish those up. But I think those will not be the majority of our work. And then the last items that we'd like to address someday is 1, 2, 3 at the bottom. And I will not read that to you, but I will allow you to ask me questions about anything that's on that list.
I do have a question.
Yes.
The Hans Heisted? He's the one that did Beach Hill, correct?
Right.
What else has he done locally?
Well, at the state park, as you're heading north, on the right-hand side of the state park, there's a wonderful recreation building. It's an open building. It has a big fireplace at the end and a roof, and there are picnic tables around. And that is similar to what is at the top of Beach Hill, and that's one of his structures. And then hidden down in the woods as you walk down through the park, there are some old stone fireplaces that have been, the weeds have grown up and the trees and whatnot, and they're really in very poor shape. I don't know if they're salvageable really at this point. But there were some fireplaces that they made for outdoor cooking when that was a popular place to go. And also around the birch trees back up on that same side of the street, back up near Route 1, there was a clump of birch trees that's still there, and there was stone seating like amphitheater, and there are some beautiful bridges. There were some beautiful bridges, timber and rock bridges that cross the stream, the water that comes down from the mountain through. And it would be wonderful in an ideal world to replace those bridges. They could be replaced with big timbers. And You know, it's a big project out there. Augusta keeps, whenever I mention anything that we're trying to expand, they'll say, well, someday you really have to get to the state park and get that.
I just noticed that because Beach Hill is one of our favorite places for my family.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just-
And we should connect him to Beach
that would be
Hill and
great.
the state park.
Just a question on the, because I don't know, working about the Camden Hills State Park, is there an initiative with the state to name that a historic
Is there?
initiative ongoing to
state?
nominate it by the state?
You know, I had that conversation with Michael Goebel-Bain, who's the historic marker person for
Yep.
Augusta for Maine Historic Preservation, just this week. And he said the state park has always been extremely cooperative in anything we wanted to do, because it's to their
Sure.
advantage too, to have
Sure.
memorial historic markers in the park. He said he didn't think they would object to anything we wanted to do.
Great.
And with that kind of support from Augusta, I don't see.
Great idea.
But we just need more, it takes a lot of people to do something like the state park in Hans Heist did.
Great. Are there any other select board comments on, first, the top 4 priorities of this committee? Anything we missed or which we should reprioritize? Remember, these committees work, yeah, go ahead, Allison.
I mean, you guys do so much work, and I feel like maybe sometimes in the past, it's sort of been like anything historic gets in the town, gets sort of, it's like whatever the Historic Resources Committee can take on, and it hasn't been shared as much by town staff, and it's like, okay, well, Curtis Island needs windows, and so you guys start working really hard writing grants over and over again. I would, I guess, encourage the committee also to feel comfortable just simply recommending sometimes things that town staff should work on, and not feel like you guys have to do everything, or not feel like, if there are important things, you can just, I see your role also as telling the town what we should be concerned about, and us feeling comfortable allocating some town resources and town staff time to things, so you don't feel like you have to do everything. And
Yeah.
I hear you, and Audra has told us that as well, a couple of times.
because I think that a lot of people are really interested in that in town, and really supportive. The historic home marker stuff everybody just loves that, and it's really important that somebody has taken that on, because it just wasn't, maybe the town could have encouraged it, and you guys have, it's a huge amount of work getting those homes signed up. Where are we with that? How many homes or applications have you gotten?
Let's see, I think, I should have looked at this. I think we've had 7 or 8 who've ordered the basic plaques now. We've had 4 that have applied for the Camden landmark plaque, which is not the National Historic Register, but it's almost good enough for that. But the state needs a little more national interest than sometimes some of the houses have. But they're wonderfully historic homes that are pretty intact. And then we had, oh gosh, I wish I could remember, on High Street and Chestnut Street, I think, I'm going to say 28 to 30 houses which
Wow.
did not have the National Historic plaque. I think it was like 16 or 18 on High and 14 on Chestnut, who ordered and paid $150.
Right.
And they've all received their plaques.
Great.
We're still waiting on one Camden landmark plaque that got lost in the shuffle between us and the Forge. And then the basic plaques, I think there were 4 or 5 who are waiting.
Great.
We order those from away.
So people are calling you or emailing you, and
No,
then
they
you're...
leave it in the office
And
with
you come
Janice. That's where the applications have been
Or,
coming.
but that it's you that's going through it all, not having,
Yeah.
that's a lot of work, I would imagine.
It hasn't been too bad. It was
Like
at
you've done
first.
a lot with this, and
Yeah.
that,
But now that the 2 historic districts are done, it won't be so bad. But what I really think would be helpful if we had more people to canvass, to leave brochures like on Pearl Street and Elm Street. That's that's a lot of help that we could use. But
We've talked a lot about mailings too. Some of the other committees have developed things that they want us to
that's-
to
Yep.
mail, or just, I just think that you guys shouldn't be shy about saying the town really needs to do X, Y,
It's all
or Z.
full.
And thank
Mailing,
you
that's
for
a
all
good
that
idea.
you've done, and
From, certainly my perspective on the select board, your top four priority items, clearly what I would certainly think of the four top priorities, I wouldn't change them. However, this is, and especially for the new chair, things change, priorities change. Don't ever hesitate to come back, and as Allison suggests, to request something to help on some initiative to move more smoother, faster. Can't always accommodate, but we're happy to listen.
The worst thing is I can't right now, but at least you'll know.
That's solid. That's what counts. That's what counts. We recognize, we're trying to go through work plans so the select board knows what our committees, commissions, and boards are doing. But we know it's dynamic also, and we don't get to get Pat in here, but probably once a year, and that's not enough. So but it's open, just have to let our town staff know that you need to come to the select board, and more than happy to listen for any modification. Otherwise, we'll presume that these priorities are the priorities of the Historic Resources Commission. I commend them. Any other comments, Taylor or Chairman?
Thank you for the obvious amount of work that you put in. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, thank you for notice. I have one more question. This is an issue that came up at our meeting. We discussed, last year, we paid $50, our committee sent $50 to Maine Preservation, which is not Maine Historic Preservation, which is Augusta.
Right.
Maine Preservation is a 501c,
C3.
and they do so much work around the state identifying buildings that are in danger of being, destroyed. They also have field service where they'll go out and assess a building for you. They actually came here and looked at the middle school. And I guess the question that came up is, should we, as a town, be using Historic Resources Committee $50 to pay dues to them? Last year was the first year we did it, and we never thought about it. We just thought they do such a good service for us. So Audra suggested that maybe we bring it before the select board. Do you see that as a conflict? I mean, it's a small amount of money, and it's saying, hey, we know you're out there, and we appreciate you.
I don't see any conflict. I don't see any conflict to it.
Not a conflict, okay.
I think it's great that if the town does donate to something, theoretically, it is something that should, I think, come through at least the town manager, or maybe
Yeah.
ideally the select board. But, I think it makes all the sense in the world to contribute a little bit to them, because we appreciate the services that they offer. I've called and asked questions about the Opera House before, and, their experiences with gutters and insulation and things like that, so.
And we asked them for help with the
Sure,
windows, too.
sure.
So,
No, that's fine.
Okay,
That's
good.
fine.
Thank you
Unless there's
very
any
much.
objection from the rest of
Thank
the
you
board,
for
I
all
don't see
your
any problem with
help.
that.
I'm sorry.
I said, as long as I said it was great with me, but there's five of us here. Okay. It's unanimous, from what I can tell. Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much.
Thanks, all of you.
That's great, thanks. Moving on to the next items, actually, that are related, are the appointments of members to the following committees in a long list. We'll take them one at a time. And then, of course, the board liaisons, select board liaisons for those committees. And I'm just pulling up the spreadsheet, which is in our packet. First on the list is Conservation Commission, and it suggests we need 2 more members. Is that correct, or is it 3?
As,
Oh, no, it's 2. It's 2, replacing Seth Meyer and Roger Rittmaster.
right, and
And we have one person, Jen
Corsi.
Corsi. That's the only person we have listed for what looks like a one-year term for up to through 2021. Is that correct? So we're still short one. And I believe Jen had an application in the packet.
She did, and I can speak to her. She was
Great.
actually my neighbor for a while. I think that she's phenomenal. Her husband, Mark Corsi, is an attorney at Camden Law. He's on the Budget Committee. She is very engaged. She's energetic. I think she would do a great job. She checked off a couple of committees that she was interested in, but I think this is a great place to plug her in.
Great. And as I look at them, I want to make sure that we address any, I was looking at the members whose terms are expiring and also wish to continue. That's straightforward. So the only action we have then would be to discuss adding Jen as one of the two members needed.
Yes.
I would make a motion that we approve Jen Corsi as a member of the Camden Conservation Commission.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you very much. The Pathways Committee, it looks like we don't have any members dropping off. We do have 3 members who are currently have terms expiring, and they are Ricker Stetson, Anita Brochus-Scott, and Jane Self. And that's the only action on that committee.
I'll make
Yeah.
a motion that we reauthorize Richard Stetson, Anita Brochus-Scott, and Jane Self to continue on the Camden Rockport Pathways Committee.
Second.
Those in favor? 5-0. On CDAC, our Community Economic and Development Committee, we have 4 members who are, I'm sorry, 2 members and 2 alternates who are expiring and who all would like to, wish to continue. They are Roger Moody, member, Elvis Cohn, member, Jeff Senders, alternate, and Scott Lehman, alternate.
Lehman Scott.
Lehman's,
That took me a second, but I think it's Lehman Scott.
I just read what was there, and you're absolutely right. It's Lehman Scott. Sorry, Lehman.
And I believe it's listed as an alternate. He's been working as the chairperson, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, something's fishy there.
things fishy there.
Having staffed that committee for a year now, Paul was the chair, and then he left, and then Lehman became the chair, but Lehman is an alternate. So we probably ought to make Lehman a full member. And of the alternates that are there,
Maybe make Ellis the alternate?
I mean, I would say make Ellis the alternate.
I would concur.
So you're saying Roger Moody and Lehman Scott as members,
Full
Jeff
members.
Senders and Ellis Cohn as alternates.
Yeah. And I say that, I mean, Ellis he's involved, but he's not there at every meeting.
All right.
He's fairly busy.
No,
and-
I would
and I think-
actually agree.
Lehman is totally involved, and Roger is as well, so.
Yeah.
And Jeff and Ellis are not there at every meeting, so
All right.
I make a motion that we approve those members with those changes.
All right.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor? 5-0. On to cemetery, thank you, Jeremy. On to Cemetery Association, we have 2 individuals who are expiring and they wish to continue, and they are Issa Babb and Jeff Sukaforth. They are both members? They're all members.
And
There's 7.
It does say
6.
there's a person.
There's 6, need one more member. Oh,
It
yeah.
says there's a person there.
It's, you're right, it's Donna Janville, and I believe her application was in there also.
Unless there's a second application, Don Jingle actually has downtown design team, check, not cemetery association.
That'd be disappointing for her.
Yeah, I think you're right. I didn't see any applications in for cemetery.
I didn't either.
So we're short a member, but we have 2 members that want to continue. And it's short a member because I believe it should be 7, shouldn't it?
Well, I move
did
that we accept the request from the 2 current members to continue, Issa Babb and Jeff Forth.
Second.
Second.
All's in favor? 5-0. Design team. Oh, my goodness. Because the select board did approve, I recall last year, the design team for 1 year, they're all for various terms. Yeah, various
Well,
terms.
We put them all in, but we gave them staggered terms.
We
as you can
did.
see.
That's correct. And they're shown here from 2020 to 22 for all 7 of them as listed. And we can name them: Rafi Baez, Meg Barkley, Deb Dodge, Dave Jackson, Richard Bernhardt, Donna Janville, and Meg Keanu.
So Meg is the one that would be up for renewal.
Yep. Well, they're all up for renewal.
Well, not according
Always have
to,
it staggered them.
It'll be next year that Meg's up for renewal.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
and then-
Okay.
so we'll okay them with the staggered,
Yep.
okay. I guess that's right, we talked about that. at the
Yep.
meeting. Okay.
You got 3, 3, 1 in stagger.
Yep, that's how we did it, that's right.
Motion.
I make a motion that we approve all the design team members with the new term limits, or not limits, but term set. As,
Sure.
and then maybe we take, what is it, Donna Janville? Oh, no, she's there.
She's there.
Okay.
She's there.
Got it, okay.
Second.
What's the official role of the downtown design team again? Did they
We're
ever?
going to discuss
Second
that
for the
next
purpose
week.
of discussion.
Next select board meeting, they'll
Yeah,
be
they're
here the
coming,
17th.
Deb is coming to the next meeting.
Correct.
On the 17th.
I think the staggered terms, as I said, I'll second for the purpose of discussion. I think the staggered terms are great. I do get nervous when we just hang on to
I totally
a
agree.
board over it, and it's sort of, I
totally
don't.
agree.
So I think this is a great group of people, but I think that when terms do come up, hopefully we'll be able to potentially have some new interest.
The option is to hold this team until we get a presentation by the design team in 2 weeks.
So we'll know in 2 weeks. So,
It's hard a little bit sometimes to know who's best. I don't feel like I have a full understanding of the roles and responsibilities of the design team.
I don't think there's any reason not to renew the people as they are right now.
Well, it's hard to
You
know.
know, just, you can say the same thing about any of the other, and other committees. I go to this committee meeting all the time. I think Jeremy does too.
Well, then, just what's the just the quick
They're
and
working
dirty,
on,
what's their, not what they're working on, but what's their, I think did we approve a thing, when we made them, was there
I
a,
don't
the
recall.
mission of
Yeah.
the,
Yeah, there is a mission statement.
We
of
did,
some
yeah, we
sort.
did come up with a mission statement.
But doing it right now, of course, they're working
Rattle it
on
off the-
the wall and thing.
The mural.
They've got a new mural, new design, which is pretty terrific, and raising private funds for that. They're also been researching signs to sort of simplify sign design and stuff. They're working on that, but Deb is coming next week to make a presentation of
2
the
weeks.
things they're working on.
Yeah, and they're also looking at reviewing the DOT plans along with some of the pathways folks on, the drainage improvements here. We're talking about landscaping.
Yep.
They're trying to take,
we're supposed to get recommendations like
They're
on
coming.
that.
2 weeks ago.
They're coming.
They're working
They
on
just-
it.
just
It
had
took a
this
while
week.
for DOT to get back to us on
Yep.
some of the widths.
Yep.
They're working on that, trying to implement some of the downtown master plan that was part of that was part of what their role
They're
was.
also working on design for the walkway.
Right.
Between.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, I
Right.
think I know some of the things that they're working.
I know, I just wanted to
Working
share
on,
that
I
that's
just-
what they've been actively
They're
working
doing,
on
they're
right
doing
now.
really good work. There's some really talented people.
I mean, I know that.
They will
I know
have
they're
some, they will
smart and
have,
talented.
Meg has done some architectural design and pictures so that we can see some of the presentations.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll discuss it next week. So we have a
They don't
motion.
have any role in approving or disapproving, like, they can't, they don't.
No.
They-
Certainly.
No.
like the Mechanic
No.
Street parking
They're
lot.
just, they very, very well have,
For example.
they have adjusted really well to,
This is a select board nominated team.
Having their
And
names
we can always make changes to it going forward. So
Yeah, no.
we have a motion and a second to approve these seven members
Yes.
for the staggered terms. Any further discussion? All's in favor? 5-0. Energy Committee, we have two people who are, terms are expiring, and Anita Brochus-Scott and Bruce Means. We have a student coming off, and we have, I believe, 2 applications in the package for a replacement for a student, and I'm getting confused in the numbers here.
Oh, okay,
7 members.
so just to clarify one thing, we do have enough room for everybody who's applied to be on this committee because Marina resigned.
Her name's not, oh, she did?
Or she is.
And her name,
officially resign?
Yes,
Okay.
okay, so if Marina resigns, then we're left with 7 names.
6.
Because Alexander is a student, he's leaving.
Oh,
So
got
there's
it.
6 names.
6 names, so you need 7.
2 applicants.
So
Gerard
2
and
up
Earl.
and 1, so we're adding 1, we only need one member, and we need, well, 1 student, obviously, to replace Alex. That's what we have. We have Philip Gerard, who's that, is that the only application for the
Great,
Energy
he's-
Committee?
I would-
Okay,
He's
all
a
right,
he's a student as well.
He's a teacher at Watershed.
okay,
Oh, he's a teacher?
He's
I
a
don't think
super
he's-
smart guy,
Experience
science
and
teacher.
energy.
okay.
It
So,
says here in the final thing, Philip Gerard is a student replacing Alexander.
It says
Earl,
unless, but he's not.
No, on the bottom line of the blue thing, it says,
oh,
It does say that, but
Student
that's
replacing.
wrong.
Scroll down.
Thank you for
past this,
clarifying
there's
that.
Pearl's application and then his.
But it's, Mark's right, and that
So-
is wrong.
Confused me too. I was
Right.
looking for a
So
while.
so the proposal for the Energy Committee is to re-up Anita and Bruce, and then to add Philip Gerard and Pearl as a Benjamin, I believe it is,
As
as
Pearl
students.
as a.
Student.
as an
Student.
alternate student.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I thought we were trying to recruit student members that were real members, but
No, but we don't have the space. There's 7.
Well, I guess.
Pearl
I
automatically
guess-
have to be the
Yeah,
not
I
real
guess
member.
my question is why, do we actually canvass the high schools and watershed for this student person?
Well, we do try. Honestly, they just have been the
I
only
think
ones
we
that have been
could-
successful
We
at.
could do a better job with the high school,
That's what I was going to say.
talked about.
We talked about that.
And I've brought that up before too, but then did I actually do anything and reach out? No, I didn't. I mean,
Same with us.
there's a
We
limited amount of time for us to like recruit in every possible neck of the woods.
Yeah,
and
I get that.
It's classic Camden Hills. The
Yeah,
teacher may
yeah,
know
my-
of someone.
My question is,
I mean, I'm in touch with her and she's definitely been aware of. I don't think I agree, but I don't think there's been an opportunity denied by like definite science teachers at the high school have been.
Yeah.
we've tried to be diligent about committees and who's on committees and who's applying. My only question is, has the high school been canvassed for volunteers for this position?
Not that I'm aware of at this time.
I think that's inappropriate.
It's,
It hasn't been canvassed either, it's just that they've been
Well,
interested,
I
and
mean,
so they found
they've-
out about it.
So, this is the first time, and nothing against Watershed School, but
Not me
we
either.
got Pete, and then Phil Gerard's a teacher there,
Yeah, I mean, come on, let's
and
spread the
Pearl
wealth.
Benjamin. So, I
We
mean, we
need
got
to spread the wealth a little bit.
three of the group are Watershed folks, and
Yeah,
again, nothing
that's-
wrong with it, but I think it's
No.
important to get,
I know, that's why I did put it all out on Facebook and I did feel that way.
And there are a lot of,
and just
students at the
didn't
high
get
school
other
that are
people
very
to-
engaged in energy.
I know. I got 3
policy.
letters from them this year on various issues, and I'm
Should have written to
just.
them and asked them to join a
I
committee.
did. They were interested, but my point was, I think, I agree. I
And
think
also, the timing's kind of tough because of the fact that they're all on summer break while, it kind of,
I just think it's important, especially, this is a great position to have on this committee and student involvement, and I would,
But there's still room for Pearl's a student alternate, because she would be the alternate, I believe. There's still room for another alternate there, another student.
I don't see where,
Not if we put
No.
Mr. Gerard on.
no.
Isn't it 2 alternates?
Are they, these? is
yes,
this one's not one of
seven
the ones
regular
in our
members
charter,
and
is it?
2
Two
students.
alternates.
So
the
Mark,
alternate
Mark's
would-
right, we could have another student.
We absolutely have
student.
position for another
We
student.
need to have another student or 2.
it just says you have to have one, so having 2 would be good.
Yeah, I
idea.
just don't want to be a
Saying
blank
we have
check for it,
room
just
for 2.
one option, if we haven't looked at the other one.
Right.
If we have room for
We
2,
set the
I would be
limits for
comfortable
this one anyway.
approving this
We
as
said
is.
it's in our charter.
no,
We
I
can
think-
add members if we want
Absolutely.
to.
We should, I think we should do it every other position. We should reach out and hold the student assignment until we get response from the high school students who are interested. If there are 10 interested and we have to review them, then we have to review 10 plus 1. That's fair. We just because somebody happened to put in an application because we didn't reach out, to me, is inappropriate.
I just think that, I don't know if you remember, at some point, I feel like I made a fuss and was like, no, we have to stop, we have to really advertise. And that was like 3 meetings ago or something, or it was I feel like we've already done this. I do agree, we can always do better getting more people, but that at this point, it would be a little bit,
And I believe there are times when the committee has reached out to the wind planners at the high school, numerous times over the years. And I've yet to see somebody from, a lot of students there, and they have not, nobody has come and shown
well,
up.
I mean, they.
Well, my question remains, has the town reached out to the high school? Then that's inappropriate.
Either.
That's
No, we didn't.
inappropriate.
So it's not,
We should do both.
then we
should
should
do-
reach out to
I agree,
the homeschoolers too.
I agree.
We put it in the paper.
Yeah, I
and
agree. I agree. To be fair, I mean, it's something I think it's a great thing. We can do 2, and maybe it won't change, but just let's do it right. We've been talking about this in all these committees.
I have a thought on this. So it just so it's going to be clear, if the fact is that there's 7 regular members, which it looks like we're accounted for if we put Mr. Gerard on.
Right.
And then leaves us room for 2 students because Alexander came off. So
Yep.
Right.
Pearl has an application in to be a student. She was prepared ahead of this meeting. My feeling is we should approve her to be on as a student alternate member, which leaves one more, and then we go back out and say, there's still one more opening on this board for a student. Come back to us again if you
I think
want.
she's 18 too,
But
didn't
I
she?
agree
with you, too.
I agree.
Graduate? Isn't she?
No, she's,
But
I
she
think
is
she's just
18,
a
I mean.
senior this year.
Pearl?
Okay.
Pearl's 18?
I thought so, but
I don't-
I thought she was
Ready to go back
voting,
to the
but,
drawing board entirely at this
Yeah.
point.
When someone has prepared.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, if it's not the historic committee. My husband's a teacher at the Watershed School. Joseph Kleinman teaches history. And just to confirm, Pearl Jeff Benjamin is a senior this year.
Okay.
She may be 18, but
it's really not.
it's irrelevant,
I
irrelevant.
just thought maybe she could be
I,
a regular member.
I
too.
just
She's
thought,
not totally-
as we do everything else, you advertise for it, you bring in the applications for it, if there are no others. Just because somebody's first at the table because they were the only one that was informed, to me, is inappropriate.
But we didn't do a special reaching out to the Watershed School. If we had
should do both.
no, we did not though. So we don't, we do not specifically reach out to individual schools and say, try to find us somebody. The reason that the Watershed, that Pearl found out is not, I actually was chatting with her mom on my Facebook page when I did the whole big thing, and she was like, Pearl just put in an application. This wasn't because of special insider Watershed,
No, I didn't say it was.
but they didn't have any opportunity that wasn't available to the public school. I'm just,
I disagree.
that Pearl just is involved and found out about it.
Operating what Jeremy said, I make a motion that we, okay, that the members are renewing and Philip Gerard as full-time members, okay, Pearl as an alternate, and then go out and advertise to fill the last alternate position.
Second.
At the high school.
Any further discussion?
I will have one point of discussion, which is that it has nothing to do with the students and everything to do with stacking the committee with, I think, the world of Watershed. But when we have our one student and two members, I do have a concern about that. I would feel the same way about any organization.
I would agree. I think,
Being heavily weighted, and thus, I think that Mr. Gerard sounds absolutely wonderful, but I would suggest amending the motion to approve Pearl.
Oh, well, no, we really want Phil, seriously. He's
I'm
not
just-
like,
I'm just
he's
talking
not, he
about-
has a different, much of a personality than Pete. Would be a,
But it's
almost like a,
it can carry how Mark, I just know that we had discussed it
I would
previously
agree
as a
with the,
potential.
I would agree.
pitfall.
It shouldn't be all from, there's too much representation from Watershed, and we should open it up. But more importantly.
We have opened it up. It's
More
just that no
importantly,
one's-
more importantly, when we have any position for any committee, it should be advertised, it should be, coulda, woulda, shoulda, we didn't do it here, so. Anyhow,
Let me ask a question. Audra, what did we do and Allison, what have we done in the last couple months to find new members from?
We advertised in all the local papers and
For all
put up a
committees, right?
posting on Facebook for all committees that had available
It's been out
spots.
there, and we can't make people apply if they don't want to apply.
it's not the point.
I will
the
say,
Watershed is outstanding in their
They
involvement
are,
and.
they are,
so
without
they-
question. Anyway, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All's in favor? Opposed? All right, onward to the next one, which is the Historic Resources Committee. And we have,
We have a student member there, or?
we have,
Say, that's the only only committee that has a student is the energy committee. That's part of it.
I know,
It's not like an official, it's just that they've taken one of the alternates and we're encouraging a student there.
well, again, why we wouldn't do it in other committees, I don't know.
Any students that are interested in, and I posted that in everything I've ever posted too, we would encourage students on all committees.
Yeah, well, they're not, so let's go on to Historic Resources Committee, where we have 4 members who are looking to be re-upped. They are Pat Scaling, Rosalie Glass, Donna Pine, and Eileen Curtis Kleinman. And that's the only action to keep the committee full, I believe, at this point, which would be, looks like 5 members and 2 alternates. Is that correct?
I move that we approve the committee members as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0, and welcome Eileen as chair. McGuntacook Dams.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Eileen on here was an alternate. Did she come in as a full member?
Yes, so what they requested is that
Mm-hmm.
Eileen becomes a full member and Pat becomes an alternate.
Okay, let's make that
Or we just make the
Yeah, we
alternates
should make that
automatically
clear
chair?
then. We should make that clear. Thank you, Mark, for catching
Yeah.
that. So what we're saying is we have Pat Scaling moving to alternate in a re-up, but the other three, Rosalie Glass, Donna Pine, and Eileen, will be members.
Yes.
Okay,
Could I make a suggestion?
sure.
I think Donna wants to be an alternate. She's talked about being a volunteer.
She's listed as
Who
an
are the
alternate.
other?
She's
who's the
listed as
other
an alternate, Pat.
She's listed as an alternate.
here.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So do we have that motion for the
Thank you.
three
As
members? Yep,
stated.
okay, as stated, seconded. All's in favor? 5-0. McGuntacook Dams, three people, all three, Richard Stetson, Paul Leeper, and Tom Hedstrom, are looking to be reassigned, wishing to continue for the McGuntacook Dams Committee.
No, Paul, remind me how we do this, because Paul Leeper isn't a Camden resident.
Correct.
Is not a Camden resident?
No.
Okay, just again, from going to the Maine Municipal Association,
Right, I know we can, but
something clarified is the only two positions that you have to be a Camden resident for, legally, the only thing you can enforce are select board and school board.
well, unless we put it somewhere in one of our own rules, but
In a
I think we
charter.
have.
You'd have to do it in the charter, it's not in the charter.
Is there any reason why Tom Hedstrom and Paul Leeper don't switch positions?
No, you can make that decision to switch them.
Paul Leeper could become alternate this term and Tom Hedstrom full member.
I'm not comfortable voting for Tom Hedstrom.
I mean, that one, we should really look at that with Lincolnville, and that's a whole larger discussion and the role of the Dams Committee.
It
and
is, it really
so
is.
I'm trying to remember if Paul's an
No,
actual
and actually,
Lincolnville resident.
given that Lincolnville
is.
sent us that letter
Seriously,
recently
Laura.
saying they'd like to revisit the,
Right.
how that committee operates, maybe you
Right.
want to put this on hold until we have that discussion with Lincolnville.
That sounds reasonable. We'll keep the committee going as is until we have the discussion with Lincolnville. Opera House Committee, we have two people who are looking to continue, in Rosanna Wang and Beth O'Connor, and Jean White, who's applied to serve. Looks like,
And I'd like to, Beth recently was voted in as the chair
Yeah,
of
Beth
the
is the
committee.
chair.
Beth O'Connor?
Yes.
Okay. But the committee is 7 people. Two are dropping off. I don't see the need for a new person. Am I missing something?
I'm curious about, and I can't remember, Roland Finley is a new member. I don't know that he was voted in, but I don't know he's ever showed up.
Which one?
Roland Finley, the newest member. I know we had somebody apply and stuff, and I don't know that he's.
Why don't you, Mark, why don't you resolve that, and we
Let me
can,
find out exactly where
and
we
if
stand
that's the
with that.
case, then we can act on Jean White. But otherwise, I'm not reading that we need another member at this point in time, if.
Why don't I
approve.
make a motion right now to
Okay.
renew Rosanna Wang and Beth O'Connor,
Okay.
and then I will investigate
Please.
the membership.
Okay, perfect.
Second.
All's in favor? 5-0. Parks and Rec, we have two people of the 7 that are looking to re-up. They are Brian Robinson and Mark Haskell. Hi, Mark. That are looking to re-up on the committee of 7.
I make a motion that we re-up Brian Robinson and Mark Haskell to
Second.
the Parks and Recreation.
All those in favor? 5-0. Personnel Board. Rick Rector.
It's the appointed.
Is one
part of the
person on the
board,
Personnel Board?
right?
No, everybody else is elected.
That's what I thought.
One appoint.
This is the only appointed position. So do we want to reappoint Rick Rector, to continue on the Personnel Board?
I think we should.
I
I
think we should
move that
also.
we would do that.
And you do.
Should hear a
Yeah,
motion,
he's-
please?
I would motion that we reappoint Rick Rector for a term on the Personnel Board.
All's in favor? 5-0. Planning Board, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3.
We actually did this one last
Right.
Yeah.
month. That's what.
Right.
And it was just Richard Bernhardt.
Dropping to-
was the alternate,
Right.
Mark Egan.
Okay, so that's a done deal. Okay. Last and not least is the ZBA, which has 6 listed here, with 3 looking to up and 2 to have applied. Now, what are the numbers totals here, Jeremy, so we get this clear?
It's very odd. The ZBA by ordinance has 5 full members and 3 alternates.
Right.
So, with Sam Smith, John Cool, Deb Chapman, and Ron Vandesol and John French being
Members.
full members, Tia Anderson is
Alternate.
would like to stay on. So
As
it's
an
one
alternate.
We have 2 people that are interested in serving. Stephen Beveridge, I think, is here.
Yes.
Christopher Ray.
And both of those 2 new, Stephen and Christopher, would be alternates.
Correct.
Okay? That would fill
Is
the
there-
zoning board.
Is there a
Yes.
limit on alternates?
3.
The ordinance says
3.
5 regular and 3.
And 3
Okay,
alternates.
that
So
would
that
fill
would,
it out.
so what we're looking to do is reappoint John and Ron as members, and then Tia, Stephen, and Christopher as the 3 alternates.
So moved.
Seconded? All's in favor? 5-0.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for your interest.
Yeah. Good to see you again, Steve.
Next Tuesday.
What's that?
Buckle up.
Jeannie's struggles are over, hopefully. The panic.
Oh, chart. Okay, I'm flashing through the stuff.
Janice will reach out to you, or the clerk will swear you in. Okay? Thank you. Yeah.
So, one thing I noticed, there are a couple of committees missing from this list.
Like,
Library Board, Trust Fund Committee.
That have openings.
No, not from that list, from the liaison list.
you know, I noticed the library was missing. Trust, what was the other one you mentioned?
Trust Fund,
That's there. That's on,
the investment, but the Trust Fund.
right,
Or
trust,
Allison
the
and I
trust
are
fund
on.
is on that.
Oh, it is?
Second to
Okay.
last, yeah, that one I saw, but I thought you were correct about, we will need to add library. And I think Midco Solid Waste is on there with, Jenna's on, oh goody.
I know, that was a there's a couple that are.
Oh,
I moved to
Yeah.
make Jenna,
Yeah,
let's
Bob, it's
let's
in-
wait for 2 seconds
if
for
you
Mark to
read
return.
it, it must be true.
Well, actually, we could start with a couple here to talk about liaison. Do we still have the adult use marijuana active committee? If so, do Allison and Taylor want to continue? Are they
Allison
real?
and Taylor, did Jenna get?
No, I have no objection to not.
I thought it was,
No, you're on.
Well,
right.
Monday nights have been a tough time for meetings historically for
Do you
me.
think that committee is,
That-
and
that's
this is
my
probably what you're
question,
going to say?
Jeremy.
We're
What does-
reviving. I got an email.
Yeah.
I sent an email, and I got 1 response.
oh, good.
Was it from Allison?
No.
It was not.
We got more than one response. Not everybody lives in the area. Did you see the very nice response we got from Liz Smith?
Yes.
And
So I've got 1 response on, Etienne wants to.
and I think, didn't Ted say he wanted to,
Could do it maybe if he's around.
right, but so it's not like it was a non-responsive committee. There was a response, just not everybody could
So
do
I
it.
got one affirmative, like, yes, I'm in, count me in.
What about Mark?
I got nothing.
Oh, we should send a second email.
Well, anyway, do we,
Send another email, I guess that's the question. I mean, you can, this committee's there, but right now it appears we've got 1 active member.
well, we just reviewed,
There's the other guy.
I mean, we should I think there's,
we just reviewed committees, and the marijuana adult use committee wasn't on the list. So my question is it active, and does it need to be active, and do we need to rename the committee members?
Okay, that's a good question. Does it need to be active? I mean, what I was hoping, next month, my plan is to come to you for some guidance on priorities for
Ordinance
zoning
priorities,
ordinance
yeah.
and development stuff coming
Yep.
up. And realizing that June is coming faster than, I wish it was here tomorrow because I'm not into winter so much anymore, but we've got June, and in order to plan for June ordinance amendments, we need to have ordinance amendments, for the most part, work through a process by end of February for sure, so that early March, because it's like 2 months before the end of March is when we need to have ordinances done. So if we're going to get a committee going on marijuana, say retail or products manufacturing or testing labs, I'd like to add nurseries to the
Yep.
cultivation facilities. I'd like to add those. But if we're going to, if you want to start with that, at that level where the marijuana working group was, and then have them work on something and then send it to the planning board or send it to you guys and then send it to the planning board, we got a lot of work to do.
I think that adds the number of things you just mentioned, adds to the time necessary to get something done.
It does.
And so I'm
And
fundamentally.
I don't have a problem, say, trying to reach out
Sure.
to some of the marijuana working group members.
Sure.
To bring them in the fold into the planning board process, like development, working on ordinance development with me in that way,
I mean, we've
rather than
gotta
having another committee.
decide. This
You
is a
guys
little
do.
bit of a tough issue.
It is.
That's where I enjoyed the marijuana working group because I wrestled with what my own opinions
I
or
get it.
positions were on things. And the cultivation was like, okay, I think I can wrap my head
Okay,
Oh, fine.
yeah,
my head around this. What I worry could easily happen with anything like retail or the rest of it, we haven't done a lot of thinking as a group about what, the five of us could support. And then you start having the planning board working on it a bunch, and I just don't want anybody's time to be wasted, and I don't want to come in later and say, well, I can't agree to that, or,
I hear you.
so it may be that there are some things that do take time. I'd like to find a way of getting good quality input from Camden residents on what we should be. Are we ready for retail? Is there a way to move forward with this slowly? I don't have a vision in my head of
that's why.
what. I do think we don't have the expertise on this
Yeah.
group of like a perfect vision of how it could work or what. I need help, I guess,
I think
and
we
I don't want to
should-
waste anybody's time.
I agree. I think we should, we're going to be looking at the ordinance priorities in very soon. And I think at that point in time, we need to make a decision. If, for example, retail becomes top of the list between now and then, we need to think about whether we want to re-up this committee or not and how we should do it. There's two approaches to it, but if there's any question about it being a priority, we should wait till we make it a priority first.
I mean, I'd even take Liz's input, even if she doesn't live here anymore. She was really
I
helpful.
agree. Liz was
I just think we
fantastic.
just need good quality input, or maybe
And
that
that's
can come
another-
from
I mean-
you, or it can come from, but
We can throw it out there. I mean, you're right, Bob. Maybe you want to wait until you decide this is a priority
mean, we
amongst you
didn't-
guys, and then we can say, okay, let's get this group going again.
It kind of inadvertently slipped under the
you just
radar
want to
tonight.
deal with this one issue of the agenda item, is what you're saying?
No,
Whether we need
no, I
the,
think,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
that's
but-
all we're doing is, I'm not saying yes or no to any committee, but we didn't address it during we just discussed committees, so obviously it wasn't close
don't
enough
need
to
to
our
approve a
radar.
liaison.
And that we should, and I think we should do that when we get our priorities straight in October for where we're going with this. And if we want to do
Just
the
to be
committee,
clear,
we'll
it was
re-up
a
it
working
then.
group, not a committee with
Not a standing committee.
Right, yes, a working group.
terms that come up
That- that's
with why we
correct.
didn't talk about it.
Specific task that they were
Yeah, and I think it's,
assigned.
and it's our collective
very
job to
true.
determine
Sorry.
what the scope of that working group needs to be. I agree, and I'm not very clear on it right now either, so I think we should put this one on the table at the moment, including liaison, until we get to that point. That's my
Sure, yeah, we don't need to assign
Let's
liaisons
just do it
to
early
the
October,
committee
maybe.
that we don't know if.
Well, to the work group, and then there's two or three different ways of approaching this work group thing, right? And that's what I hear Jeremy saying, I agree. Let's cross that bridge in
There.
a couple of weeks. Onward to the Camden Rockport pathways, of which Jenna,
And I think Taylor and I are going to share this moving forward.
Yes.
okay? Okay, all right. So we'll mark that as Jenna/Taylor for the Camden Rockport pathways. Camden Conservation is this person named Mar. Is there any relation to you, Mark?
Stick a C on
It's
it
his
and I'll do it.
nickname, yeah.
Cemetery, Allison?
Mark has been doing CDAC, but if Mark would be open to it, I would like to share it.
Well, yeah, let's put both names on.
You got it.
Okay?
Because I keep going, but yeah, you should
I'd
come.
really like
This
to
is
share
where
it with
Jenna
Mark.
shines.
Yeah,
So Jenna Mark
yeah,
on
if
CDAC.
that's okay with Mark. Okay.
Does Charter Commission need a liaison?
Probably should.
Sorry,
Yeah, who dares to do that?
Sorry?
I didn't know you wanted to have that conversation right now.
We don't have to. We can have it. I mean, it's just started, so we don't have to jump
We
on it
should
right this
probably
moment.
talk about it, but
I'll do it.
it's its own, well, I see this as almost its own agenda item, but I don't think we should assign a liaison.
I think you're right.
Because, just to remind everybody, the way that the Charter Commission got started was not the way that the MMA recommends a Charter Commission get started, which would be as a result of a discussion and deliberation of the Select Board thinking we need to have a Charter Commission that really looks at some of these larger questions of, do we want to become a city council? Do we want to, do we even need a charter? Could we just adopt the state charter guidelines instead? It was John French saying, I really think you need to do this. And basically it's like, okay, you've been around long enough. So watching this, if it's important, if you think it's important, then we think it's important. But it wasn't, normally the charter, the select board would give the charter commission some guidelines because we would have real things. We need you to look at this, this, and this, and we don't have that. So my big concern when we approved it was that we were sending the wrong message because none of us were able to come up with anything that we really thought warranted a charter commission. So I was concerned that we were going to end up spending a bunch of very thin staff time on something that was not really concrete. I think we should be really clear right now before it gets farther down the road of saying, okay, the role of the Charter Commission should probably be to start off just figuring out if they really think we need one.
Absolutely.
But we can't, we have a lot going on. The town staff has a lot going on.
Right.
It's a tough, I mean.
I think we need to, I agree with you, Alice. I think we have to make it clear that what the charter is, no, charter of the Charter Commission, what the role here is and what the first steps have to be, because I think it's, they've only had one meeting.
Just their
It was just an
organizational meeting.
organizational meeting. I think the next one is kind of important to understand where the town is coming from in terms of staff, in terms of support. And like Allison said, absolutely, you're going to start off with, well, we reviewed this thing, and other than typos and a few changes, we don't see any, I'm exaggerating to make a point.
I just want to let you know, I was in favor of having it. It was.
Yeah, I was too.
So,
I was too. I am too. I think there are changes that
Nobody
need to
knows
be
exactly
cleaned
why.
up, but that's not my input that affects this thing. It's really the Charter Commission. There's 9 people on the Charter Commission that need to make majority decisions about what elements going forward. I think that needs to be made very clear to them at the next meeting, that how this whole thing should be coming down as you just.
And how it got started.
And how it got started. That's fine. And
Because there was, at the organizational meeting, there was a lot of confusion
I
about.
think so.
What's our purpose and
Yep.
what should we be doing?
Yeah. And I think that needs to be clarified, and we need to clarify that at the next meeting. Now, it doesn't have to be liaison to do that. Any one of us can do that, or you can do that. But I think it needs to be straightened away. What?
I mean, I do just think Audra is really, really busy, and
I agree.
she's,
I totally agree with you. I'm
we
100%
need
there.
her for,
Yeah, we've already paid the price this year for diluting a planning director early in the year because we didn't effectively prioritize, and I think it's the same thing with Audra's time too. She's too flexible, and does too much as it is with mid-coast solid waste and that stuff, and all these.
we really need her there,
We
so
do.
it's
We
like
have a long list of the very crucial items. Well, I would agree.
critical.
So I think we should, we don't need to name a liaison here. I think we just need to make sure we get this message across, and how we do that. We just need to discuss how to do that.
We can always change it moving forward if we decide we want to.
Yeah,
later down the road.
absolutely, absolutely. But, here, it's, I can't see myself or
And I
any
mean,
one
I
of
do
us
think the
sitting
board
here.
needs to have a broader discussion about.
I would agree. I would
Because
agree.
they're asking for resources,
I would
they're
agree.
asking for a few
I would-
things that
I would
I
agree.
don't feel comfortable saying yes or no to them, and I think the board needs to make
Yeah, and
that
I
decision.
personally have never seen this as being a large amount of work for the town staff, period. And not at all.
German?
Sorry? Yes, they did.
Yeah,
They
it's
did.
Steve Milczewski.
And it should have been John French, because John is the one who wanted to do
Well,
this and
that's-
had the
that's-
vision for it,
But that's their decision. They made the decision.
I know,
eventually.
but there has to be some ownership of it in terms of what we should, I think it should be, everybody should read the municipal officer's
Mm-hmm,
manual, which has a really nice section about what a charter commission does.
It does.
And why it would, what a charter commission does and doesn't do, and why we have
Yeah.
them. It's a really great just every member of that committee should read that section.
And Deb Dodge did bring that up, and it was a link that I sent out to them with a bunch of follow-up information
great.
from the first
Great.
meeting. So
Great.
they're kind of aware that that's sort of, that's the normal reason why you would form a charter commission if
Yep.
you were really trying to
Yep.
grapple with what sort of form of government you wanted, and
Yeah.
is our current form of government working for us? And so I think that after hearing that and talking a bit about it, and some of them read more about it, that's kind of got them back to, well, we're, by and large, as a group, we think we're satisfied with our form of government.
Sure.
We're going to have this public information gathering meeting on the 9th of September, where, maybe we'll get other types of input from citizenry about this, but
Sure.
How have we
anyway, I mean, I
advertised for
think
that?
they're pretty aware of, the
let's-
significance of a change like that.
Yeah, let's let them go to the next meeting and discuss it further. But if you need reinforcement of that, just let us know, and we'll be glad to, however we do it, step in and just make sure this is clarified as you craft it, because I totally agree. We don't want this thing getting off track, because it can do that very easily. So let's just put the liaison portion of this on the shelf for the moment and keep going with other elements here, like the design team. Mark?
Liaison to the
Still
design
good?
team.
Totally good.
EMS Review Committee has been Mark and Taylor.
I think we're both good on that.
Yep.
Energy and Sustainability has been Mark and Allison.
Oh, yeah,
You watch it.
I do
Nick.
watch.
Okay.
Actually, yeah,
Okay, that's
that's
fine.
been great, and
That's fine.
I'm never afraid to speak up when
Yeah.
but yeah, you carry the heavy load there.
Fine.
Thank you.
It has been Taylor and myself, and that's fine. Taylor's taken more of the lead there, and that's great. Historic Resources Committee has been Allison only.
And I've been lackluster and overwhelmed the last couple months. But I'd love to also, I do think we should share as much as
I would share that one with you.
because Jenna is so interested in that, and sometimes that meeting time is
Definitely
really
share
tough
that.
for me because of the
Let's,
kids
let's-
picking up
let's-
from school.
let's-
But
Meeting time for me.
Let's revise that to Allison and Jenna
Okay, awesome.
on that. Historic Resource Investment Committee has been myself and Jenna.
Yes, and Jim Hurd, who I think hears more about stuff
Yeah,
than we do.
yeah, that's true. That's
We'll
be-
have to
that's
do
the whole
better
committee. That's the
communication
whole
this year
committee.
going forward. Yeah.
yeah, and
Easily.
so are we approving Jim Hurd then right now too?
No, I don't
No,
think
that
his
was
name
sort
should
of
be
a
listed.
side
I
comment,
miss-
unnecessary side.
When do we do that?
That was just like an interim step.
That's correct.
When he
We-
first
this is
got
another-
off
This is
the
another
select board.
committee that probably should have been on the committee list to look at what we want to do
Yeah.
going forward, because Jim would have to be appointed by us
Okay.
or somebody
Well, the way
else.
it's set up, it's two select board well, it's normally two select board members if you want to do it, plus the finance director and myself.
Oh,
Yeah.
So, I mean,
so Jim was just to help
Jim-
us maintain stability during the,
Yeah, he was a bridge.
Regime
He helped us
change.
tremendously.
was willing to do it, and at the time, everybody
Yep.
said, that's
Yep,
fine.
no,
it's fine
you're
with
absolutely
us.
correct. You're absolutely, but we should keep with the standard, which should be two select board members, yourself and the finance director. Fine, we should clarify that.
Jenna, Bob, and
Yours
you
would do
guys.
with that.
And Jody and Audra. Okay, cool. Opera House Committee has been Mr. Mark.
You think I say enough about the
We'll get
Upper
back to
House?
this. I didn't know you were on it.
I was angling to get onto that or with historic
so
resources,
you-
so I'm satisfied by being.
You can do
co-host.
both.
I think you're probably always welcome at the Opera House meetings too,
Mark,
right?
it's like Mark does such a great job.
I inadvertently zipped right past the McGuntacook Dams Committee because I was thinking in my head that we've kind of put McGuntacook Dams on the list, so we'll have to discuss this one later too, also.
Existential question.
Okay, all right. Mid-Coast Solid Waste Directors from the Select Board, it says here it's Allison and Jenna.
I passed
I
that
suspect
buck right
it should
onto
be
you
Allison.
that very
It should be
same
Allison
night.
and Bob.
You guys are
Give
doing a
credit where
great
credit's
job.
due.
All the time that you put in.
Yes.
We've got everything just perfect.
It's like a second select board. You guys
Get
are
mad.
amazing.
Don't worry about it.
Expression, we won't get mad, but we will get even.
Second select board. That
No,
is
that's
not-
how
yeah.
I felt. Yeah, it's like the.
Is-
But I'm not complaining. That's all I ever wanted was
It's
to be on
actually,
that board,
it's
so.
actually fun.
It is.
He says tongue in cheek. Parks and Rec Committee has been myself and Allison.
Really?
And I didn't know it was Allison, to tell you the truth. Now I can know who to
I
get.
watch sometimes.
Oh, good, I'm glad you do. Unless you want to take your name off, that's fine.
Yeah, take my name off, because then
Okay.
everybody just thinks I'm a,
Yeah, I agree. It's just,
With you, Bob, if you want someone else with you.
okay, Taylor and myself on Parks and Rec. Personnel Board, Taylor, Personnel Board? We have a liaison on the Personnel Board? We have a liaison on the Personnel Board?
I believe you.
It's Taylor,
I missed that. Oh, Personnel Board?
yeah.
Remember when we had that
Yeah, I mean,
discussion?
as needed.
Yeah, okay, okay,
Next, planning board should be there,
all right.
Yes.
and that's been me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been Mark. Thanks, Mark. The Trust Fund Advisory Committee are Allison and Jenna.
Happy to stay with it.
Our ZBA is Allison and Taylor. I just didn't know that, that's why I said it that way.
And then my last one
Chris,
is,
Interesting, it's interesting that you
I-
have our liaisons to
I'm-
planning boards and ZBA.
Yeah, I would agree.
yeah, I feel like
I would agree.
that's your job a little bit.
I don't think
A
boards
lot.
should have liaisons.
I don't think a select board should have any
I totally
input
agree
in
with that.
ZBA stuff or planning board stuff.
I
We
agree.
can certainly speak at the public hearings.
You can.
Yeah, but I think,
I don't go to give input, I go to listen and understand what's
yeah,
going on.
but anybody can do that. I think I agree.
So that's, it's, we're often there to listen and to learn, not to speak up.
Yeah, but that brings liaison's role.
Absolutely necessary.
Liaison's roles is defined in our charter commission guidelines. It would suggest you don't have one for a board.
Our charter mentions the select board liaison
I didn't say
system.
charter.
You said charter
I
commission.
said commission, board, committee guidelines.
You said charter in there too, but
You're
we'll go to the tape, but.
Because like they're separate entities.
They are separate entities, and
We don't.
and if I have to go.
They're quasi judicial in their.
And
Structurally, it doesn't make sense.
structurally, it doesn't, because as liaison, if a committee has a question about, well, how do I get to the select board? I can tell them how to do that. Or can we do this? If a planning board is asking me that question, or with ZBA, I got a problem with that. Seriously.
I mean, as chair, you should be willing to speak to planning board members about,
I'm
I
willing
get what
to
you're
answer
saying.
questions, yeah, but I think we should not have designated liaisons for the three boards we have.
Right, we also probably shouldn't be appointing them the
Although,
way we do.
one thing I'd like to request, for some reason I haven't been on the email list for planning board, and I've showed up for the last two meetings, which were canceled, and I was not informed.
That was done on purpose.
So, yeah.
Sorry, that makes me not happy.
No, actually, we
Sorry about that.
So, yeah, two in a row.
It's happened to me with
Which
Microsoft
allowed me to
Waste.
go to the library and hang out downtown. It was sort of fun, but.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Annoying.
I will still be attending even if I'm not a liaison.
Anybody can attend, any select board member can attend anything they want, whenever they want. I think it's great. In fact, I've showed up for occasion, but I agree with Mark, you learn a lot by sitting there and.
You do.
And we.
watching from home.
Well, yeah, you do. And for me, it's better than watching sometimes. But I think ZBA, Personnel Board, and Planning Board should not have designated liaisons.
Good with that?
All right. Anyway, did we miss anybody you mentioned?
have the library board.
But
Continue
you always,
the library
you
board.
always have.
Yeah, can I continue with it? It's just not on the
I
thing.
think we should add that to the list. Kendall, the library board trustee representative would be Jenna. I show up sometimes, but I
Yeah,
don't
that
want
would
to
be- that would be
That's
great.
different. It's
Only
just,
for the arm
Yeah.
twisting.
Yeah, it's a good dynamic.
Jenna's fine. If we missed anything else you can think of. Cool. So we have to move on to, oh boy, what's next? The discussion on the parks curfews and closing times for public restrooms, which we started discussing earlier. Thanks, Jeremy. The question here was about, it's been particularly started, I think we're going to start it with the
Let's
public
wait for Mark to
restrooms.
get back.
Oh, okay, sure, we can do that. Let's take a
Just take a
little,
little quick break, maybe.
sure. Sure, we can take a 5-minute break.
Doesn't have to be out.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Back
Mike.
at the select board meeting discussing the item about the park curfews and closing times for public restrooms. The ordinance is in our packet for the current regulations regarding hours of operation. And generally, as I read them, they are that the parks should be closed to public from 11 p.m. each day until the hour of 6 a.m. each day the following morning. And it also says unless hours of closing for particular areas shall be fixed by the Board of Select Persons of the Town of Camden after public hearing.
I do have a question. I didn't see it on here. Maybe I
Yep.
missed it.
Yep.
The restrooms on
Yep.
the landing,
Yeah.
because I've gotten complaints about that. Number one, from some people that they have not been opened in the mornings when they're supposed to be, because the parks people have not gotten there in time. And then they've been closed at strange times when we have big town celebrations. They close them, July 4th or something. They're closed after a certain time, even when we have things going on.
I have a suggestion, actually, that Rockland does that I think might help with this. Just
Yeah, you go for your suggestion and we'll see.
thought about
I
this.
have one too. and-
Yeah, so the bathrooms has come up before, it seems like, closing early at inconvenient hours, that kind of thing. The Chickawaukee public restroom in Rockland, which is used frequently, police officers work 24 hours a day. So the police close it at night while they're out on patrol, and then it's opened in the morning, I think by Parks and Rec still, but it's closed at night because at 10 o'clock or whenever, there's an officer around. Obviously, they might be busy at some point, but they're always here, and it seems to work well out there. Just a thought.
I mean,
Well, I guess my confusion is the current ordinance, as I read it, doesn't even mention the restrooms. It mentions then
well,
maybe,
they're part of a public park, and that's what Randy, so I've talked to Randy about this and a bunch of different police officers while I've been down, late at night especially, looking at fish in the public landing. And so I've actually gotten a lot of police perspective, and, I mean, what Rockport does is they just don't close their
the restrooms.
restrooms on the public landing. We complain when people pee in the streets for obvious reasons. There have been issues with fishermen, or we don't know who actually, but defecating in between the floats. And I guess I think that it would be worth it to try, let's just leave them open. We have, it seems
24/7.
like, yeah, and see, let the police department provide feedback. If it becomes a problem, then we'll deal with it. But we have a lot, we want Camden to be vibrant. We have a lot of things going on. We have
Yep.
bathrooms down there.
Yep.
I find it extremely annoying when they're closed and,
Yeah.
let's just see if it works.
So what you're suggesting is an amendment to this ordinance that would basically address the restrooms at the landing only.
I don't know if the ordinance needs to be amended. Ask Randy what he feels needs to be done in order to,
all right.
or
But
ask
something-
Audra what she
I think
feels.
they're going to stay open for 24/7 on a trial basis.
Yep.
You can vote on it tonight, it's
Yep.
done.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thanks.
Trial basis for a year?
Yep.
Okay.
And if you like it, we can amend whatever we have to amend.
Yeah, you don't have to put a time limit on it. We can just make it.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
other thing I'll make a note, in the wintertime, they tend to close the back bathroom and just leave the front one open, which I thought was really strange as well, because there's
A whole review of the bathroom closing policies and procedures.
So we're looking as a motion to have Randy just give him the directions for the late beach, I'm sorry, not late beach.
Public landing.
The landing beach only for a trial basis, open 24/7. Is that correct? Second, anybody?
Second.
All's in favor? 5-0. That was easy. Lastly, no, that's not true.
We're-
We have a discussion on the Village Green Memorial.
No,
Wall.
so there's a little bit more to the whole parks thing. The public bathrooms I would say, are really
Okay.
just one part of
The
that.
curfews, you're talking about the curfews in the park from 11 PM to 6 AM?
Curfews in park, I don't think it's called a curfew, and we have curfews is a separate thing, but then we have the parks just closing. A lot of them have, some of them have signs, some of them, I believe they close at 10.
11. Something different.
Something different here,
yeah.
but it's,
I've always thought 10 too. It does say 11 here.
All right,
but-
so to the point, what are you suggesting?
I am concerned, after, I rent rooms to people, and it's interesting to get their feedback as, out-of-towners or sometimes from out of the country. And one of them said the other day, I can't understand why why you're not allowed to be in the parks after 10. And it just doesn't really occur to me to even, I would go to Lake Beach whenever I wanted, and, but I think it is sending the wrong message to send. I've heard from people who have been there at 11 after they got off of work, they go to Lake Beach, they're sitting at a picnic table looking at the stars, and the police come and ask for an ID as not, just part of their normal, something. I don't know if somebody complained or if somebody, but we have sent the message, we have saying that they close. And that's just, it's sending an opposite message from what we say of wanting Camden to be vibrant and have young people. And then I think we need to find a way to loosen that up or ask for recommendations on.
Does this ordinance apply to all town-owned areas? For example, I'm thinking of the end of Marina Drive. Does this apply to that?
I guess it
Reason I'm
depends on
asking-
whether or not you consider it a
Road,
park.
so, yeah.
Oh, there's a
like a right-of-way,
There's a
not a
public,
park.
it's not a park, but it is town-controlled, and there have been issues there because of people doing bonfires late at night. So I'm asking the question, is there?
Since it's not really a park recreation area,
okay.
it doesn't apply to it.
I mean, that's an intertidal rights issue, and we have a right-of-way through, and then we have,
Yeah, as long as
who
we.
owns the beach?
My question only was, is there any park that we would not be concerned about? And I guess the answer I'm hearing is no.
Well, I would say that I did get a comment from Randy when we were talking about
Yeah.
this, and he said, yeah, I mean, Lake Beach is fine.
That's what I thought.
All the in-town parks, he's
That's what I thought.
fine, no issue with that. But he said the public swimming areas like Shirt Tail or Barrett's Cove, because, when you're on the water, all the sound is amplified. He would recommend that.
Does it-
because of the sound.
Also, there's a
though.
there's a
That was
danger
his
too.
recommendation.
There's a note in here, it says that on October 2nd, 1995, the selectmen voted to establish closing times for public parks and cemeteries as follows, and they specifically made Barrett's Cove, Churchill Point, and Lake Beach an hour earlier to 10 PM.
You're right. And I saw that. That was my question, as to whether there are certain areas that, are we really talking about when Harbor Park and Lake Beach only? Or are we talking about more than that?
I mean, I'd say those are the primary.
That's what I thought. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. I
Village
mean,
Green.
Is there any worry about somebody at Short Tail
Landing.
camping overnight if we had it open all night?
I mean, Randy did say that there's a likelihood that people will park at, Shirt Tail Point or Barrett's Cove and,
Sleep there.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we want that to happen. There's a whole history here of there being problems, but
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of those same problems in Camden.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, all night long isn't necessary.
I think it's really clear that the in-town is fine. We should, and maybe.
What
I
hours?
can understand the swimming places and it can get a little troublesome.
Definitely the boat launch, we don't want
Oh,
boat
yeah,
launches
oh, yeah,
being
oh,
used
yeah.
or
Yeah, so-
steamboat
Are
landing.
we talking about Lake Beach and are you
So
thinking?
Lake Beach, he said, was okay.
Yes.
Because that's not, no, but if you're
To
talking
what?
Shirt Tail, Barrett's Cove.
Right. It is.
Hosmer, I'm
To
not-
stay open for longer.
For longer, I mean, I do think allowing overnight camping would, I tend to be radical with the public bathrooms, but I think we don't need to go to the point of allowing people to stay there overnight.
Yeah.
I just think we should be,
Yeah, that's true. but-
That's quite, I think, easily outlined as far as a change. I
So are
mean,
we talking about looking at Lake Beach only for extended hours?
Village Green, Harbor Park, Lake Beach.
I don't think somebody should be kicked out of the Village
Do we
Green for
control
sitting there at 11 PM.
Harbor Park or the
I think the
library?
in-town places should be open. It's the, the ones that should close, maybe when they close now, or
The ones you
Shirt
mentioned,
Tail,
Barrett's.
Barrett's, and maybe even Hosmer, because those are swimming in
Well,
And they're well out of town.
well, it's easier.
I don't know how that's
But then
actually
there's,
enforced, but.
but then you keep, then you can keep, it's also harder to police.
Yeah.
But then you keep Lake Beach, Harbor Park, the Landing, Village Green open. The in-town places should be open later.
Yeah, but I don't think we control Harbor Park.
We could talk to, I'm sure we could talk to the library about that.
Exactly, I think we should have.
I just think that's the kind of place, when Allison talks about sitting somewhere looking at the stars, that's
Sure,
the kind of place where
sure.
after you've had dinner, I can see a totally innocuous, like, oh, we're just enjoying Camden, it's 11:30, we're going to go see the stars before we go back to our hotel downtown.
So to this,
I don't think we actually enforce that anyway. I've been there after
Oh,
11.
me too. I've also, my mom
But I don't know if it's
lives
just 'cause
very
it's
close to
not
Shirt Tail,
enforced.
and when I was a teenager, I would walk up to Shirt Tail.
Yep.
And it can be not a good place.
Yeah, I don't want people staying
Overnight.
Shirt
I
Tail
can
overnight.
confirm that.
sounds-
I mean, I was scared a couple times as
We keep those
20 years
places
ago, but
closed
still.
and open up the in-town, make sure the in-town.
so the only in-town place that we really control is Lake Beach.
The Village
Green
Green.
and public landing.
Public land is a
And-
park?
It's a public recreation area.
It is? It's a parking lot.
There are benches.
Okay,
There's a long history.
Oh, that's fine. What is that? That's fine.
Speak to the library about. Harbor
Yeah,
Park.
we'd have to
In
do
that
that.
conversation. with-
Maybe we need more direction from Randy on how it is enforced and what the,
Yeah.
I can talk a little bit about
What the
that.
time should be.
So when they come and, ask everybody for their licenses, that's sort of like a warning
Right,
for criminal trespass.
right.
And I don't think criminal trespass has ever been enforced,
I wouldn't think
really.
it would be.
but it's still really kind of intimidating to have, these Romanian students that I talk to, that they have to provide their ID because they're sitting at Lake Beach at 11.
I mean, you.
Yeah, I mean, that's
But
fair
that's what
enough.
we've told the police to do.
That's
So
right, that's
it's-
correct. So the question would be, do you want to get two decisions? One is we want to talk to Randy first and get more info and the feedback on this, which might be smart, or two, we can just attack Lake Beach, the Village Green and the public landing and just change the hours from something different than what's in here.
I'd like to see information. Randy,
Sure.
come and talk to us
I
about
would
it.
think that would be smart too.
I think that would be due diligence. I
Yeah.
strongly
I
held
think it's a good
opinions,
point.
but
I think it's a
would like
good
to hear what
point.
he has to say too.
So we'll table it until we get Randy to talk to it, maybe in the next meeting or two.
Sure.
Recommendations from you would be much appreciated.
At least a historical perspective from.
Yeah,
police
I
officer
would
point of
agree.
view.
I would agree, but I do agree they
There's this whole
should be.
binder in the town
Yeah, I
office
know.
about the history of all this. Great, it's like,
That's what I've heard.
Well, there's a whole curfew ordinance that isn't enforced anymore that probably should
There's so
be
much stuff.
repealed, and
Right.
and the bikes
Right.
and the rules
Yep.
and the.
All right, so,
the real push against kids hanging out
Like,
in
it was like,
Camden in the
kids
90s.
are destroying Camden, how do we?
Every parking lot had a nickname. We're not going to go into it here, but.
Just going to bring that up, kind of.
cool. We do also have on the agenda an update, which are in the packet, I believe they're in the packet, because I did see them earlier in an email, the financials. Does anybody have any comments on the July 1st, 19 expenses and revenues that were listed there? If not, that's cool. I mean, I didn't really see anything untoward. We're on track.
It looked
Looks
really-
good.
Really quickly.
It's, nothing untoward. I love that word. But if there are any questions, we can also bring it up again if you have a chance to take a look at them, or want Jody to answer any question, we can feed them through Audra. Lastly, on the agenda, we have to convene as wastewater
Oh,
commissioners.
hold on, are
What?
we not going to do the Village Green?
The what?
Oh, geez,
Item
thank you.
11.
No, we definitely have to do that. We have to have a discussion, and I skipped right by it, on the discussion of the Village Green Memorial Wall, and how we approach it and its approval.
I don't know
Thank you,
anything
Allison.
about.
Okay, so.
Sure.
I can give, let's see, add to,
Anything in
I'm
the
just going to
packet
pull
about
that up.
There's nothing in the
Folder.
packet.
There's nothing in the folder.
Let's see. Where's-
Well, we can introduce it as being one where this is the issue of the memorial wall and the criteria that are applied to individuals who may have their names applied to that wall. And I know there have been significant discussion in the past in the town, before my time on the select board, about better identifying what the rules and regulations are for accomplishing that procedure with the, in fact, stated intent a number of times. Am I reading something I shouldn't be? About what that should be, including, I understand there was a discussion at one point on the wall filling up and having inserts in the ground for plaques for further names, if in fact it should be filled up. That was, I'm just talking about the history of discussions. But I think more poignant is the discussion of how we get a person's name to a wall.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things that I've never looked at much in Camden, but I got an email from a woman, and I don't know if, how many other people might have gotten the email, and it sounded familiar, but the woman's name was Jan Dearborn, and she wrote me a really extensive thing about her brother, Stanton. Let's see here. Shoot. And she told me this story about, so Stanton was, he was born in Camden. He went to high school here. He was on Vinyl Haven a little bit. When he was in his senior year in high school, their mother, their parents got divorced. They're two siblings, and so they were both moved to New York. Stanton lasted, this is during the Vietnam War, Stanton lasted just a few weeks in school there, was very shaken by they both were, by the culture shock of all of a sudden being in New York when they were used to Camden. And Stanton ended up at 17, he went to his aunt's, and she allowed him to enlist for Vietnam, signed off on that. And then Stanton served 2 tours, about 3 years, as a door gunner during Vietnam. At 17 years old, this is him. And he came home. His sister Jan picked him up at the airport, and they had things, thrown at them. It was your typical awful response for people who came home from Vietnam. And then he came back to Camden. He was here for about 3-4 months, and then, unfortunately, 2 days before Christmas, he ended his life. He's buried at Mountain View Cemetery with military honors. And I spent a really long time talking to Jen. She had looked into the history of all this, and that kind of prompted me to talk to a few other people. The town has a few big folders explaining the history of how we got the memorial wall. And it's really moving. Camden didn't have, around 2007 is when this was put in. For at least 6 or 7 years before that, there was a group of citizens headed by Elizabeth Moran, Parker Late Sr., Barbara Dyer, Frank Carr, some of the people that have really been involved in lots of great things in Camden. And they realized that we didn't have a memorial in Camden that was really suitable for, what a lot of other towns have done. And so they raised a ton of money, they collected names, and went through a very rigorous process of getting it approved for the Village Green. Which is, as everybody knows, is an Olmsted Park. So that required, this folder is just, there is a really long history. So when a few people saw this on the select board agenda, I got a few more emails one was from Elizabeth Moran saying, I want to give you the whole, the history of how we went about this. And if you just Google it, you'll see that there have been a lot of controversies in the past. Jim Kierstead was here. Maybe even a couple years ago now, saying he was doing the engraving and finding it, he was the contact person for people that felt that they should be on the wall and doing the engraving, and he was really stressed out by the responsibility. He said there really should be a committee. And so basically, I think that this agenda item is just to put in motion what has been talked about many times before. You can find articles of John, with John French saying this really needs to be scrutinized. And because it's like a small thing that has kind of just been delegated to a committee, but it wasn't even totally a formal committee, and it worked really well for a long time. Elizabeth Moran was the director of the library, and so people would get in touch with her and say, okay, I think my loved one should be on the wall, or I want to be on the wall. It's complicated by the fact that people that are alive are allowed to be on the wall. A lot of places say, Camden even used to have a policy that there were no memorial or no monuments to be erected for the living. But this is going to continue to be an issue. It's worked. Elizabeth Moran no longer works at the library. She's retired. It got sort of passed off to somebody else. There have never actually been written criteria published for this is how you get on the wall. It was understood very well, I think, by Elizabeth. There's certainly people also on the wall that do not meet the criteria. It's supposed to be, originally what was printed in the Camden Herald when they were seeking the names was that the person had to have been a resident of Camden at the time that they served. And that was stated in one other different way at the time was also at the time they enlisted or at the time they were inducted, but they never established exactly how they were going to determine whether somebody was or wasn't a resident. And no matter how perfect the criteria is, there are sometimes these difficult cases, and I think everybody that I've talked to Jeff Sukeforth at length, who has been involved through the Legion, trying to help people track down the required forms. They've been using this DD 214 discharge paper and the hometown of record. But it's definitely caused a lot of angst in the past, and it's really unfair to put it on one person, too, to try to figure it out. So the proposal that I would make tonight, after having talked with a bunch of the people that were involved, and they were all fine with it, was that the Select Board encourage a committee of the town manager, one Select Board liaison, somebody from the original honor roll fundraising committee, Elizabeth Moran, has volunteered to do that, and then somebody from the Legion, which Jeff said he or somebody else was certainly willing to help with that.
Okay, so it's 4.
Yes, so this group would just basically
Standardize the
would
procedure.
get in writing the criteria, and the criteria really don't need to change that much. But then also have that group recommend a method for review of difficult cases.
Yep.
And I think the way that it may work best is if we are still going to need help from groups like, the VFW that can help people track down their paperwork and figure out and then make recommendations. But I think since it is on town-owned property, people tend to think that the town, if I found one letter, I found letters in those files promising, from town managers promising that people were going to be on the wall, and then there's been a runaround because it's been, and not on purpose. So if ultimately it were to come to the Select Board, when you put names on there, then at the recommendation of a committee, and then in difficult cases, we can talk about it. So
This committee of 4 would be basically charged with, in summary, to bring the criteria to us to discuss for the selection. But in that process, there'll also be what I would call an appeals procedure through the Select Board?
Yeah, so they would say that this committee wouldn't necessarily be the standing committee that would forever be in charge of it, but to at least agree on, okay, this is the criteria that works, this was the original intent, and this is what we recommend that the Select Board do in the future. We should have a town policy that we vote on.
Good
So
idea. I know that, I believe this woman presented this case to the prior board before.
She did.
We went through it before the rest of you were on the board. And at the time, whoever was making the decisions insisted that he didn't fit the criteria. But I think you're right in actually that it's very nebulous.
The gray zone.
So getting some really standard rules would make sense. And maybe there's, these are people that did a lot for this country, and certainly in Vietnam's time, were really treated poorly when they came back. So maybe there's a way to, let's let's do our due diligence and come up with some standards and see if there's a way to help people instead of.
Like in this particular case, everybody, surprisingly enough, everybody that I actually talked to about it was in the people that have been very involved said, yeah, this is sort of the example where you would want to make an exception. He had lived pretty much no time in another place.
Right.
We do, however, have the issue of floodgates, where there are people that go around and try and get on lots of different walls. There are people that move here when they're 65 and say, well, I was there, in Vietnam 30 years ago. And so that's,
Understood.
it's.
So can we go as far as naming the 4 people to this board tonight, or do we have to leave that to a decision downstream? Because you said Jeff or somebody else.
Well,
and-
I didn't get the official, I think
Okay.
that it should really just be left to the to get these, a process for getting these recommendations to the select board could be left really at the discretion of the town manager.
Yeah, we can
So
do that.
if she decides
do
that
that.
somebody else needs to be involved, that's fine too.
We can-
reach out to Jim Kierstead.
Sure.
As well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Because he, this was originally
Sure.
his
Oh,
idea.
Probably a good idea.
So
His name should probably be in that group, I would agree.
he might not want to do it, but it's just
Yeah,
going to be a
I
small
mean-
group of people that puts
Let's leave it
together.
flexible,
Okay.
because somebody like Jim
So-
Kierstead he might be willing to be involved, but
Why
he
don't-
also
why don't-
kind of feels burnt out on all
Understood.
this.
Why don't we propose that Audra be authorized to establish a memorial wall committee of no more than 5 members?
And it's not even a memorial wall, it's the
Well,
honor roll.
Honor roll, establish their criteria, the appeals process, and get that ball rolling. So whoever you name for select board liaison, you have to name yourself, Elizabeth, Jeff, and maybe Jim, whatever that group is.
Basically, that the town, that we
fine.
move to start
That's fine.
taking ownership of this and making sure that decisions get made in a public way and a
So do you
transparent
want a
way.
motion for that, or are you okay with just going ahead with? the
I would
motion?
like you
You
to
bet.
do a formal motion.
Okay, so I like the motion.
Second.
All in favor? That was easy. You guys make a job so easy. With that, now we have to reconvene as wastewater
Make a
commissioners.
motion, we adjourn as select board and reform as wastewater commissioners.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0. And we have one action there, is to approve our quarterly commitment of sewer user rates for April 17th, 2019, in the amount of $294,852.94
Does it have to be a motion? Do we have to do something specific?
to approve the amount.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0. With that, we can adjourn as wastewater commissioners and adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion, we adjourn as wastewater commissioners and adjourn this evening's meeting.
Second.
All's in favor? 5-0. Thank you very much, Bruce.